I'd like to call this council and committee meeting to order. Before we proceed, I want to acknowledge that the land upon which we are gathered is the traditional territory of the Adirondack, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe people. We are the beneficiaries of ancient agreements such as the dish with one spoon between the Anishinaabe and the Haudenosaunee, who agreed to share the abundance of the land through peace, friendship, and mutual respect. The two-row wampum by which the Haudenosaunee welcomed the settlers and agreed to share the land in mutual respect, and the Treaty of Niagara, considered a fundamental document by First Nations in all future relations with and treaties with the British. We recognize that we have a responsibility to be stewards of the land in cooperation and collaboration with the Indigenous peoples, not only for one generation, but for all generations to come. We understand that we have an obligation to learn the lessons of our history, educate ourselves about the experience of the Indigenous people, and seek opportunities to heal the wounds that will result in reconciliation with our Indigenous sisters and brothers. Many First Nations, Métis, and Innu people live and work in Fort Erie. We stand with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardship of the lands on which we live. We have the good fortune to live in a land of such abundance, diversity, and beauty. Let us be vigilant in protecting Turtle Island. Mr. Clerk, the roll call.
Your Worship, all members of Council are present.
Thank you. There's one addendum this evening. There's an addition with respect to a visioning exercise with respect to our official plan. And there are two locations where the public will be able to provide input to the municipality. The first is on March the 6th, 2024 at Stevensville Memorial Hall. And the second is on Thursday, March the 7th, 2024. On the 6th, it's at 4 p.m. On the 7th, it's at 5 p.m. And that will be here in the Leisureplex Banquet Hall. That's an opportunity for all residents to provide input into what the town's official plan will look like going forward. And that's the document that guides us as to where development can take place, what kind of development, and what areas should be protected. The second thing I wanted to mention is that this is Black History Month, and within Black History Month, there's also a Canada Heritage Foundation or Heritage Day, which and then they have a Heritage Week during the week of February the 19th to 25th. And that is something that we will be addressing at our next regular council meeting. We will be declaring Heritage Week, but I want everyone in Fort Erie to take advantage of the history and heritage of this area. Not only the Indigenous history and heritage, the European history and heritage, but also the Black history and heritage of an area that has a lot of history. And then finally, I just want to point out that on February the 14th, it's Valentine's Day, so I want to wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. Okay. So in terms of the next item, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, Your Worship. I wasn't in attendance on January 29th. However, item 7.1 on the agenda, that was the proposed, it was a notice of upcoming public meeting for a proposed official plan and zoning bylaw amendment for 409 and 423 Walden Boulevard. I have to declare a pecuniary interest on that as I'm actually the tenant of one of the properties in question, my business. So. Okay,
thank you. And you've completed the form that is necessary? I will be. Okay. Any other declarations of pecuniary interest? If none, then so I've just made reference to the upcoming public meetings with respect to the visioning workshop. In terms of public meetings, we have a public meeting this evening under the Planning Act. It's a draft plan of subdivision, draft plan of vacant land condominium, official plan, and zoning bylaw amendment for property municipally known as 576 Ridge Road North. People in town will know it as the old Ridgeway Crystal Beach High School property. And this public meeting is an opportunity for council to receive information from staff relative to the application that's been made by the current owner in terms of proposed development at the site. Council will then hear from the developer or the proponent or the agent of the developer. We will then ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in favor of the application. We will then ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition or raise questions about the application. There's also a digital format here, so I will be asking Mr. Patton at various stages if there's anyone in the digital waiting room that wishes to address council. And then before we conclude, I will ask the clerk if there have been any additional written memorandums or messages provided to staff relative to this application that didn't make their way into the information report. So I'm going to start then by asking Curtis Thompson, who is the staff member dealing with this application, to come forward and provide us with some background information. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, council, members of the public. I'm Curtis Thompson, registered professional planner and supervisor of development approvals. So we're here for the statutory public meeting, as the mayor has outlined, with respect to a few Planning Act development applications for the property at 576 Ridge Road North. The applications were deemed complete under the Planning Act in late summer. The developer had held a public information open house in September to gather early feedback from the public and help address any questions that had arisen. And the purpose of today is to hold the statutory public meeting. I'd note that it's quite a few days past the standard timelines under the Planning Act, but there were some complications with getting the application to this point. And following this meeting, at a date to be determined, we'd be bringing a recommendation forward to council regarding the applications. So this is a neighborhood location map. The property is located within the delineated built-up urban area in Ridgeway towards the north, and it's about 5.3 hectares in size. The lands are the site of the former Ridgeway Crystal Beach High School. As you can see from this map, the outlined in yellow is actually subject to the applications, and the owner has excluded the original 1927 school building from the development applications. And a heritage impact assessment was done with regards to that school. Downtown Ridgeway is about 1 kilometer to the south, about a 10-15 minute walk. The property is in proximity to a couple parks, the Shagbark Nature Park towards the east, Beaver Creek Parkette, about 1,000 meters by foot to the west, and there's a future park that's been identified in the secondary plan towards one of the Royal Ridge Drive subdivision phases. The lands are surrounded by mostly detached residential to the north and the east. There's also a daycare nearby to the east. There is a woodland complex to the south, more detached houses, and some sporadic commercial uses along Ridge Road, and single detached and townhouse dwellings to the west. These are some shots of the streetscape on Ridge Road North. It's a 2-lane designated collector road by the town. The homes in the area are from different vintages. There's some stuff from the mid-1800s, early 1900s, and a lot of post-World War II era homes. And there's also some shots here of the designated western facade of the school building, which is what's designated under Part 4 of the Heritage Act. The reason it's still included, even though it is excluded from development applications, is the bylaw does apply to the entire property. The building had been subject to a small fire recently. These are some shots from Prospect Point Road North. It's characterized, it's a two-lane local street owned by the town. The homes on this side are on more sprawling, larger lots with some deeper front yard setbacks. And the shot at the top left is the edge of the woodland complex, which is predominantly on the neighboring property to the south, but does encroach onto the subject lands, and was the subject of an environmental impact study. The town's land use schedule for the Ridgeway Thunder Bay secondary plan has the property designated as institutional, which is in response to the high school. Some objectives of the Thunder Bay Ridgeway secondary plan are to respect the historic character of the area, ensure development's compatible with the existing, development that actually supports the downtown commercial areas, and broadly encourage compact development, intensification, a variety of housing, and active transportation. This is another relevant schedule of the secondary plan. It's the transportation schedule, where we can see that Ridge Road North is a designated collector road and has provisions for future bicycle and pedestrian facilities. Prospect Point Road North also has provisions for future pedestrian facilities, i.e. sidewalk. The applicants have proposed, the official plan amendment has proposed to redesignate the lands into a mix of medium density residential, low density residential, with hybrid environmental protection designation and open space designation. The open space designations being applicable to the stormwater management pond and a series of mid-block sidewalks. The medium density residential designation, which I'll speak about more shortly, is the area to the north, which would be subject to the draft plan of vacant land condominium, and the low density residential designation applying to the detached product towards the south and east along Prospect Point Road North. The town's comprehensive zoning bylaw currently has the property also zoned institutional in response to the official plan designation. And the applicant's proposed zoning bylaw amendment application is site-specific for a mixture of the R2A residential 2A zone, RM1 residential multiple 1, open space zones, as well as complementary R2A holding zone / environmental protection zone, which is in response to the woodland complex, which is still undergoing further environmental study at this time. This is the proposed draft plan of subdivision. There's two main quadrants of residential, which the medium density block being the large block to the north, which is on the right of the screen here, and the detached residential forming the lots around Street A and along Prospect Point Road North. The stormwater management pond is about on the middle of the site towards the top along Ridge Road North. And as you can see here, the high school site is beyond the limits of this draft plan of subdivision application. In total, there's 49 lots proposed for single detached dwellings under the subdivision lot fabric. One of the blocks is for the private 70-unit condominium, which is the subject of the vacant land condo application, which is on the right of the screen. And within that block, I'm going to jump to the next slide here, it's probably a bit easier. Within that block, there's more single detached dwellings, totaling 45, and 25 townhouse dwellings. We've highlighted where the multi-use pathway connections would be, connecting the site from west to east and from north to south. The proposed street has a conventional 20-meter wide right-of-way, which is pretty typical. Some of the site-specific zoning departures that the applicants are proposing in the R2 area, shown in yellow there, is basically as per the town's default zoning provisions, with the exception of the lot area is being reduced slightly. The EP zone / R2A zone is highlighted with the green hatch to the left, which is subject to the results of an updated environmental impact statement to the town's and region's satisfaction. This is the draft plan of vacant land condominium for block 50. I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. It's basically showing the ownership and tenure configuration under the condominium. That would be under the condominium corporation's domain, with the network of private streets, parking spaces, and exclusive use areas. This is the site plan that's associated with that application, a bit more legible here. So in the middle, we've got conventional townhouses. The area in blue are smaller lots, single detached dwellings. They have a much narrower frontage than is normal, about 7.6 meters, and the area in yellow are more conventionally sized front-loaded single detached dwellings. So all of these dwellings would be a party to the vacant land condominium application. A few of the zoning departures outlined in the site-specific RM1 that's proposed on this block include a reduced planting strip, abutting detached residential from 3 to 1.5. That's internal to the site to the left here, which is against the proposed lots on Street A. Minimum lot area is being sought for a slight reduction. There's a reduction in minimum landscaped area from 50 to 45%, and there are some reductions to the minimum internal setbacks between buildings. We're in receipt of comments from external commenting agencies as well as town departments. The region, just some highlights here. The region's request in the environmental impact study be updated, as well as the town's environmental planner with respect to the endangered species, potential for endangered species habitat, which needs to be, the extent of which needs to be identified, as well as some typical conditions regarding archaeological warning clauses, waste collection. The town's development engineering has identified that there are some sanitary capacity issues downstream, which I understand are impacting a variety of developments in the area. There are upgrades that will be needed to Ridge Road North and Prospect Point Road North, namely sidewalks. And the other comments from the other commenting agencies were pretty typical, those being public utilities. Variety of public comments came in, and I won't spend too much time on these, as I imagine they'll likely be brought up shortly after my presentation. But there was comments with respect to there being a lack of open space and parkland in the town in this area. The dwelling units is excessive. Inquiries as to how many trees would be removed. General concerns about traffic speeds in the area. Ongoing drainage issues along Prospect Point Road North, and questions as to the adequacy of infrastructure and the public utility system, and questions about capacity at the schools, and a request for a new privacy fence along the north lot line. And just to reiterate, an open house was held on the 20th of September 2023, which some of these comments are derived from. And that would conclude my presentation. Happy to answer any questions of council.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Do any members of council have any questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for your presentation. Could you go to slide 8?
Don't have the numbers here. Is that the transportation schedule?
No. It's where you kind of have the...
Pardon?
This.
Oh.
There it is.
Yeah, transportation.
Where would the Royal Ridge Drive Park be on here?
So this is the secondary plan. So based on this, the park block is shown, as with any secondary plan, it's shown conceptually as north of this, at the end of Bellevue Boulevard here. And Royal Ridge Drive comes in. This parcel fabric mapping is outdated, but Royal Royal Ridge Drive comes in around here where this dash line is. So the park is at the, in between those two.
Okay, do we know the size of, like, is that park going to be a neighborhood park, or it's going to be a parkette, or do we know any of that?
I can't answer that at this time. It's only been identified conceptually as a park in the secondary plan.
Okay, thank you. In regards to, okay, I guess I can ask this when the report comes back. The garbage pickup, if you could go to slide 17. Where would the garbage pickup be? Because none of these are going to have curbside, right? They all have to bring it someplace.
Perhaps the applicant can help answer that question later, but this will go through as part of the draft plan application. There will also be a site plan control application that needs to come in with it, where we'll be getting dealing with the technicalities of the site. So some of the properties may need waste collection pads, but I mean, I'll leave it to the applicant, but I anticipate they're probably going to seek public waste collection pickup and meet the region's criteria for that design.
Okay, and my last question is that you talked about the 3 meter from, I think it was slide 18? No. Yeah, slide 18. Okay, the rear, you talked about the minimum distance between buildings being 12 meter, 15 was required, so they want a 3 meter decrease. Where would that be on here? Can you kind of point to
Yep.
where?
So in the middle of the property here on the townhouse blocks, this is the rear wall. So the townhouse blocks have their long wall. That would be considered the rear wall. So the reduction would be from basically it's the combined rear yards of the two townhouse blocks. So from 15 to 12, so 6 meters on each side effectively.
Okay, 6 meters on each side. If they didn't get if we wanted them to keep it to 50, like to the normal, what would it be then?
If they had to go to 15, they'd have to either redesign those townhouse blocks or redesign the broader townhouse or the broader condo block to make it work.
Okay, well, I understand, yeah. Okay, so if we're going to go to 9 feet, basically, right? That's pretty much, we were taking 9 feet out from each side, so we're actually decreasing the backyards by 18 feet, back to back? Or am I doubling it?
3 meters is about 10 feet.
Okay, so let me look at 61 and 54. Okay, and that white area in between, that's the backyards, right?
Yep.
Okay. How big is it?
Sorry, like in here? Mm-hmm. Well, it's, I can't zoom in now, but they've requested 12 meters for that setback between the two walls. And then the frontage of those townhouses is, the interior lots is just shy of 7 meters. So whatever the math works out to be there. And then the end units would have a larger rear yard because they've got this interior setback to add to that.
Is this rear yard a shared rear yard, or is it going to be, like if I own 61, what could I do in my backyard?
I'm afraid that the applicant would be best to answer that question because that's going to depend on how they set up the condominium corporation. And based on this configuration, it would appear that the rear yard may be integral to the stormwater management drainage system for that townhouse block, so it would be under common element, but I think the applicant may be best suited to answer that question.
And these are townhouses, right?
In the middle, yes.
In the middle. So, and this is just my impression of it. It doesn't look like there's any backyard.
This is why I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this slide because the tenure configuration of the condo blocks can be a bit deceiving. So their rear yard is effectively 6 meters plus their lot frontage, and then 6 meters on the other side, which is would be considered a pretty conventional new development rear yard. Based on this condo block, it looks like they're showing a common element down the middle, and I know that the consultant, some of their private block developments have kind of a drainage swale feature down the middle that's landscaped. So I reckon that's likely what this would be. I don't know if they'll have exclusive use areas to that, but
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of council? So, Councillor Lewis.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. And I would agree some of the feedback from the public meeting is what I have heard a number of concerns from the residents on. The last slide that you had up there is probably the best one to show. Yeah, so block 54 to the left, that pathway. I was asked this before the meeting, and what does that lead to?
So there's an active development application to the south here. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head, but there is an active, I think it's a draft plan of vacant land condominium application. So that area is also undergoing the similar environmental impact study as the subject lands is for the same woodland complex. But there is basically a laneway that comes up here. So there is a drainage outlet that's proposed from that development to the south, which this stormwater management pond is facilitating. So that block there has been proposed as containing a storm sewer easement and as well as a multi-use sidewalk connection to connect the lands together for active transportation.
Thank you, and if I can continue, and that's assuming that that development turns into what's currently being proposed. The reason I ask, the individual who lives on Prospect Point Road, not far from the development, was asking if that access way could be added somewhere in the proximity of lots 35, 36, 37, which would allow for potentially some pathway back up to that stormwater management pond in the backs of those lots on Street A. And they were hoping that that might be something that could be considered by the developer, which would allow for a bit of a connection or a walkway between the Ridge Road North and Prospect Point Road North.
Okay, so, oh, sorry, this might be a bit more, I can't quite see 35, 36, 37. Is that down here near the
Yeah,
corner?
so they were referencing that general area.
Oh, okay.
And I realize an answer on that might not be something that you can do tonight, but that was one of the questions asked from one of the property owners in the immediate area.
Yep.
They just thought it would be nice to have some connection between Ridge Road North and a walking trail through the stormwater management pond area down to Prospect Point.
So
as
there,
opposed to a little one to the north and one potentially to the south that may or may not lead to something.
through the mayor. So yeah, with the way the draft plan's currently set up, there's the one multi-use path along the southern flank of the stormwater management pond between the old school. And then there were two recent additions for added connectivity to the north and to the south. The one to the south contingent on that development even occurring, or in that design that it's been proposed. And then the one to the north connecting Prospect Point Road North to the townhouse block and Ridge Road. But there is at the moment no connection or no trail along like the north or the east side of the stormwater management pond.
Okay, so the short answer to that one is no?
This plan doesn't contemplate that.
Thank you.
Any other members of council? Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Your Worship, and Mr. Thompson, thank you. Just looking at, well, thank you, that's a perfect one. Block 50, it certainly appears Street A has sidewalks on both sides. I don't see anything in Block 50 as far as sidewalks. I did notice that was one of the neighborhood concerns. Any input there?
Through the chair. Yeah, staff, I don't think would be opposed to sidewalks internally on the private townhouse block. It's not super common, but it's certainly not a bad design feature. The speeds tend to be quite low on the private townhouse or private block developments because of the laneway carriageway. But yeah, it's something that can be looked at with the applicant.
Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. And just touching on what Councillor Flagg had mentioned a minute ago about sidewalks, are we envisioning any kind of traffic calming or any kind of speed bumps, curb bump outs, anything of that nature, just to encourage, particularly in these kind of condominium complexes, you typically have a 20-kilometer-an-hour, design speed. Is anything envisioned to ensure that traffic would be encouraged to drive at such a speed?
Through the chair, at this time, we haven't gotten into that level of detail with the applicant. So we're discussing the draft plan of vacant land condo, and as I mentioned earlier, there would need to be a site plan control application that comes in. So we can work with the applicant to see, and engineering staff, if it's feasible, if there looks to be a need to calm traffic, whether that be through vertical deflection or horizontal deflection. Speed humps are one option. There's usually a few tools in the toolbox for that, but it's something that we can definitely look at with the applicant.
Any other members of council? Mr. Thompson, just looking at this slide, it looks like there's shrubs or trees down the middle of that portion between the two rows of townhouses. So you had mentioned possibly there's some drainage aspect to that?
Through the mayor, based on the vacant land condominium plan that came in with this, it appeared that that area may be under common element for the condo corporation, and it could. We don't have the detailed engineering, grading, and drainage servicing plans for that townhouse block yet. That typically comes in following draft plan approval, but it appears that it may be forming part of their stormwater management system.
And in the back of each of those townhomes, it appears there's a little patio or something of that nature in kind of a dark brown. Is that what that is?
Through the chair, yeah. It looks like they're proposing rear covered decks or uncovered decks. I'm not sure if it's covered or uncovered, but something off the back landings there for each of the houses.
And that would further reduce the rear yard in terms of anything you can do other than, I guess, look at your neighbor and sit on the patio. Sorry.
I suppose that's what's being proposed.
That's a rhetorical question. I apologize. I shouldn't have even asked it. Had there been consideration given to, I know this is a condominium development, but had there been consideration given to a street flowing through to the east over to Prospect Point Road so that not all of the traffic that's being serviced by this condominium block is coming off of and going on to Ridge Road?
The applicant may be able to help answer that question, but there was no conceptual street connections that were in the secondary plan, so there wasn't any indication by staff early on in the process that a through connection was warranted here. It's definitely an option. It's quite a large property. There's a variety of design options, but it would appear that with the two segmented pods that it looks like it would cut down on traffic rat running through that area. But we had been working with the applicant on improving the active transportation connectivity. So some of those mid-block connections came in recently.
And have there been any discussions on the south part of that development where the environmental area is? If that turns out, excuse me, could you folks please be quiet? We're trying to concentrate here. The area where the environmental concern is, if that turns out to be in need of protection, has there been any discussion, or is it a little ahead of the game yet, as to how the developer might redevelop this plan?
In this case, that would likely stifle the ability for about 9 or 10 of the lots, depending on the ministry setback from being able to go ahead, including that storm easement there. I don't know. I'm not involved with the file to the south there, but it is part of the same woodland complex.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. That then takes us to the developer or the agent for the developer. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of council. My name is Ethan Lamont. I'm a planner with Upper Canada Consultants. This is William Haicoup. He's the planning manager with Upper Canada Consultants. Did have a presentation. I'm not sure if staff is able to get it up on the screen. So I'm going to go through a brief presentation here, and then we'll be available to answer any questions that you may have.
Councillor Noyes?
Oh, sorry.
Well, if you just speak up.
Sure, I'll try to speak louder.
Mic is on, so if you could just speak up a little
Of course.
clearly. Thank you.
So the applications affect the former Ridgeway Crystal Beach High School lands, shown in this image. As you're aware, the school was closed in 2017 after the Greater Fort Erie Secondary School across the street was opened, and the lands in Ridgeway were subsequently sold. The lands have frontage on both Ridge Road North and Prospect Point Road North. They're approximately 6.3 hectares in area, although only 5.2 hectares is subject to tonight's applications. The property remains zoned and designated under the town zoning bylaw and official plan as institutional due to their former use. Thank you. So moving on to the proposed development. This image demonstrates how the proposed development may look after it's built out. So the development features freehold single detached dwellings in the south and eastern portion of the site, accessed from Prospect Point Road, and a private road condominium block consisting of singles and townhouses accessed from Ridge Road North in the north and western portions of the site. A variety of unit types, sizes, and tenure options have been provided in order to meet a wide range of housing needs and preferences within the municipality. The development also includes a stormwater management facility along Ridge Road North, as well as pedestrian connections, which will formalize a mid-block connection between Prospect Point Road and Ridge Road North. The portion of the property containing the original high school building is excluded from these applications. So this slide provides an overview of the different components of the submitted draft plan of subdivision. The yellow represents the 49 single detached lots, some of which will front onto Prospect Point Road, with the remaining lots fronting onto the proposed Street A, which will connect to Prospect Point Road. The lots in the southern portion of the site, so on the far left of this image, are impacted by potential woodland buffer, as Curtis mentioned. The status of the wooded area is under question and subject to additional environmental surveys. The surveys will determine if the wooded area is considered significant. The official plan and zoning bylaw amendment consider the potential impacts, which will be discussed in a future slide. The proposed vacant land condominium block is shown in orange. I'll be providing more specific details about this block in the next slide. The proposed stormwater management facility consisting of a pond is shown in green, and the proposed pedestrian connections are shown in purple. So here you can see the proposed development for the proposed vacant land condominium block. A total of 70 dwelling units are proposed, consisting of 25 townhouses and 45 single detached dwellings. The units will have frontage onto an internal private road network, which has 2 connections to Ridge Road North. The looped roadway enables efficient traffic flows and ensures that emergency vehicles and garbage trucks have access into the site. There's also 26 visitor parking spaces located along the western edge of the private roadway. The condo block has a surplus of parking above what's required in the zoning bylaw. The townhouses have been located towards the center of the site, with the single detached dwellings positioned around the perimeter. The development includes 2 different single detached typologies, both of which are more compact than a traditional single detached dwelling. The smaller units will help to improve housing choice in the municipality and provide housing options that cater to a wide range of housing need and preference. So this slide shows the proposed official plan amendment. The single detached lots, shown in yellow, are proposed to be designated as low-density residential. The lots impacted by the potential woodland buffer have also been dual designated as environmental protection, pending the results of the additional surveys that are being completed. If the surveys determine there's a significant feature, the environmental protection policies would apply to these lands. The proposed condominium block, shown in orange, is proposed to be designated as medium-density residential, and the stormwater management block and pedestrian walkways are proposed to be designated as open space and are shown in green. So moving on to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment, it looks a lot like the official plan amendment. The single detached lots shown in yellow are proposed to be zoned as site-specific residential 2A zone. Same with the proposed official plan amendment, the lots impacted by the potential woodland buffer are dual zoned as environmental protection zone pending the results of the additional environmental surveys. These lots are shown in the lighter yellow color on the left-hand side of the screen. The condo block is proposed to be zoned as site-specific residential multiple 1, and the stormwater management block and pedestrian trails are proposed to be zoned as open space. So a number of reports and studies have been prepared for the proposed development. So first, a heritage impact assessment was prepared. It concludes that the development adheres to the objectives of the designation bylaw and provides recommendations to enhance the heritage attributes of the high school. Most of these are applicable to the development of the high school building itself. Second, a traffic impact study was prepared. The study found that the site-generated traffic is not expected to result in new delay or queuing concerns in the study area. There's no geometric signal timing or traffic control improvements recommended at any of the existing intersections in the study area as a result of site-generated traffic. The proposed access locations are compliant with TAC standards or are not expected to exhibit any capacity concerns. The site plan provides internal connectivity for active transportation users and creates the opportunity for further cycling network connections. And the existing roadway system has significant surplus capacity to accommodate the background corridor growth in site-generated traffic through the 2028 horizon year. Third, an environmental impact study was completed. The initial study concluded that the adjacent woodland does not meet the criteria to be considered significant. However, as I mentioned, there's additional surveys to confirm the status of that wooded area. And finally, a functional servicing report was prepared, which outlines the overall servicing and stormwater management strategy and confirms that the existing municipal services have sufficient capacity for the development. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, sir. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you. Through you to the presenter. Thank you for your presentation. If you can go, good picture, good. If you're looking at the townhouses block, I can't really see it on here. The town like 79, 68, 50, 51, where they're back to back. And you have the row of shrubs going down. I asked the question before on the town's presenter. No, you don't have on these the little build-outs of the back patios.
Yeah, so right now we don't have a final unit design, but it's typical that most people in their rear yard would like some type of deck or patio, so we always plan to accommodate those spaces. So the area in between, we're asking for 12 meters right now, which would be a 6-meter rear yard setback and a 6-meter rear yard setback, which is standard in your RM1 zone. However, when there's a separation between the rear walls, then you seek 15. So we're seeking that reduction to help accommodate and really allow for those decks, but also what we typically do in those common element areas is we run rear yard catch basins between the blocks of townhouses. So we like to be able to pick up the drainage that way and make sure it gets conveyed to an appropriate location. And by doing that, it allows us enough space to put like little fences or screens in addition to coniferous plantings, deciduous plantings to really create a buffer between the two blocks. So in this case, we're asking for the 12, we're providing about 14, but that's to give us a little bit of extra space. You know, should we get into the detailed design stage and add a sidewalk, that gives us a little bit more flexibility and room to do that down the road.
Okay, I'm misunderstanding something here. It should be 15. You're asking for 12, and somehow that's accommodates more than what the 15 would?
Well, no, but what it does is we've made provision to accommodate the things that would be otherwise provided in the 15 meters. So we're seeking the reduction, but we're still providing all those attributes that are commonly provided.
Okay, because that's not quite how it was said. In regards to the shrubs down the middle, how much, okay, so, and I'm just doing my math in my head, and I'm not good at meters and feet or whatever. So how big is the backyard from patio, if I'm having my patio to the, I see you offsetting them, but from, if I had to go from the outside to the outside of each of the patios, what would my space be between there? I would imagine each patio is about 10 feet, right? Usually?
Yeah, about 10 feet, that's right.
So we're going to subtract 20 feet from the 12 meters, right? So how many feet do we have?
We'd have, well, standard or a 6-meter rear yard is 20 feet, so plus 20 feet is 40 feet, minus 10 is 20 feet.
Okay, so we're going to have a 20-foot backyard that's going to be shared between both.
Well, no, it would be split down the middle.
Okay. Is that not the same thing?
More or less, but again, I think what I'm trying to say is your standard rear yard setback in the RM1 zone, if it was a freehold lot, would be 6 meters. So that's what we're asking for these units in the middle.
Okay. I'm just thinking, and here, okay, so now we're going to put the stormwater management thing in there and the catch
Okay,
basin.
Councillor Noyes, this is an opportunity to ask questions.
Okay, so how much backyard are they actually going to have? What could they actually do in their backyard?
Like, in terms of what they would be able to use it for specifically, growing some grass, having a vegetable garden, enjoying it, the same as any typical resident would.
The swale, I'm saying there's a swale, but you never mentioned the word swale. Is there a swale in here anywhere?
Well, we haven't completed the detailed design yet, but yes, it's typical that there are swales between the units in the back, but the size of those swales, how long they are, is really dependent on that detailed design. And like I said, we like to include rear yard catch basins in the back that really help convey that drainage away, so we don't end up with a massive ditch down the middle that is needed to convey the stormwater. In this specifically, there'll be an internal storm sewer system that will convey the stormwater into the stormwater management facility. So there's no actual stormwater management happening on this block. The stormwater management pond is providing that for this.
Okay, so I'm going back to the swale question. I don't know if I understood it completely. There may be a swale, there may not be a swale, and if there is a swale, you don't know how big it's going to be.
Correct.
Okay, so we have 20 feet that we're working with, and the swales are usually around 6 feet from
Yeah,
end to end.
Yeah, so a typical swale is a 2-to-1 slope ratio. So at the widest, we make them 2 meters wide, so about 6 feet. But that's at the greatest extent of them most of the time. And that's why we do the rear yard catch basins, is so that we can have much flatter backyards, more space that is usable, and we don't have the long-term problems of people putting things in the way and blocking that drainage.
Okay, so, and I have this thing with swales and no backyards. So we have the 20 feet. We now have a 6-foot swale. So now we're looking at 14 feet. So and I can't put my garden in the swale, right? Okay, just wanted to make those points. Thank you.
Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship, and through you, thank you very much for your presentation this evening. I've had some brief discussions with the builder regarding the singles within the condominium development and the price point. But I'm just wondering, is there any information on potential prices right now that you're willing to reveal or share, like attainable type housing or anything like that?
Yeah, certainly at this point, with the smaller singles, we're hoping to come in just under the 500,000 mark. So considering what some of the larger singles, newer singles are going for, we feel that is hitting a different price bracket.
Any other members of council? Councillor Christensen.
I'd like to switch to the actual roads and traffic. I wanted to get some clarification, if you can, please. Oh, and thank you for your presentation, by the way. I always forget that. What you talk about the traffic impact study area, and I'd just like to get clarification on what that means for the proposed development.
Yeah, certainly. So through you, Mr. Mayor, the surrounding intersections are all taken under review. They actually do traffic counts, so how many vehicles are going through those intersections, and then they compare those against the tax standard or the Transportation Association of Canada standards. And the transportation engineer with RV Anderson has come back and concluded that there are no capacity issues with the vehicle trips that would be generated from this development. So we were a bit strategic in how we set this up, where we did show the private road development going to Ridge Road North, and we showed the freehold going to Prospect Road. So it kind of splits the traffic from the development, one going to one side, one going to the other. So it provides a balanced approach in terms of how much traffic is going to one road or the other.
And through you, Mr. Mayor. The other question would be, did that analysis include the prospective units that would be going into the multi-story building that is conceived for replacement of the actual high school building?
Certainly, it did include all those units. At this point, we've pulled that part out of the proposal tonight. We will certainly be coming back for that. But yes, it included those and included the projections all the way up to 2028 in that study. So looking at the surrounding other developments that are coming online that we know about that have been approved. So I feel like it was a fulsome traffic study.
Thank you.
Any other members of council? Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, gentlemen. Just wondering, when you get into the actual building of the units, if you'll be considering renewable energy sources for heat, if you will have charging stations and those type of things built in.
There can certainly be a consideration for them. I know right now on a lot of our developments, people are asking for that, especially for those visitor parking stalls. So that's something that we could take back to CNP and see if there's enough hydro capacity to add those, because they are a pay-for service most often. So I certainly appreciate that note, and we'll look into that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? So I've got a couple of questions. And the first question is, we saw a photo of the existing high school building, which experienced a fire a while ago. Do you folks know why the windows haven't been boarded up?
I'm sorry, sir, I can't answer that question.
Today?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. You must have anticipated my question. And then second of all, do you know why part of this development is being proposed as a condominium as opposed to simply freehold, just like the rest of the development on Prospect?
I think it's a balancing of the unit typologies, but also the ability to use land efficiently, meeting the policy targets of infilling and intensification, and then also balancing the servicing needs and the cost, right? As you know, land has gone up significantly. In order to make things sustainable long-term for our communities, we have to find ways to provide more housing and do so in a way that is financially sustainable in the long term. So there's a myriad of reasons and variables that come into this, and it certainly is a big picture approach, and I think that we've done coming back with a more well-balanced plan in terms of adding singles into the vacant land condominium gives it a little bit more variety than a complete townhouse block.
Has consideration been given to making a further mix and providing some semi-detached homes in both parts of this proposal?
That's certainly something we could take back and discuss with the owner. If council is looking at some semis and we can achieve a comparable unit count, I think that would be something we could certainly look at.
Well, I think the challenge may be the size of the lots that are being proposed for the single families units. And so the semis may help pick up some of that. And then with respect to the condo development, I know it looks like you're trying to keep that all self-contained. Any consideration given to providing some type of traffic outlet to Prospect Point Road through the east of this condo development and then down through the single-family homes on Prospect?
At this point in time, like I indicated earlier, we wanted to really split the traffic. And in my experience for private condo sites, when you connect them to two different roads, a lot of people use them as a quick way through a private site. That introduces quite a large concerns where it's not a full public road. You don't have the same paveway width. It's just not quite the same setting. So there's certainly instances where it's necessary and desirable to do so. But I think that the way we've set this one up, and based on the comments that we've got back from staff, we've added the pedestrian connection to help provide that connectivity through the site. We've got the two roads in for fire emergency services and to meet the waste collection requirements. So we haven't considered it in depth at this point in time for those reasons.
And then finally, do you have any concepts, drawings, or designs of any of these units that the proponent might be wishing to put into place?
Well, we are currently working on that right now. As I indicated, we got the comments from staff about 3 weeks ago and how to make this switch, so there wasn't enough time to prepare specific unit designs for what we're looking to do here. But in talking to the owner, he's actively working with an architect to put that together, and as soon as we have it available, we certainly share with that.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your comments. Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Mayor, Chief the Presenter. Block 51, which is the stormwater management pond, there's a lot of green space around that. So is there any plan on ever developing that, or is that never going to be part of any housing?
No, that's correct. Should this be approved, that block would be conveyed to the town for their ownership. I will add, through this design, based on staff's comments, we have lessened the slope on both the Bridge Road north side and along the school side, so it's a bit flatter. That way we don't have to provide fences, and it gives us enhanced opportunity for plantings and whatnot. But with a stormwater management pond, you always want to be careful, as it technically is an infrastructure facility. So in large rain events, it will fill up with water. So we try and put it in a position where it's not completely open and being used as a park, but still does have some visual aesthetic that is nice and pleasing, and a little bit more extra green space. So we've achieved that here.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. My last question is about the garbage, because I understand there's not going to be garbage pickup like at the end of each home. Like they're going to have to bring us up. But where would do you have any idea where the garbage would be on here? The garbage, where they would be bringing their garbage?
Yeah, so it would just be at the end of the driveway for all the units. There's a couple on the end that would have waste collection pads that we'd locate by the visitor parking ultimately. But no, the intent is that the garbage truck will drive through this and pick up the garbage cans at the ends of the driveways.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you very much, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next, if there's anyone who wishes, other than the proponent, to speak in favor of the application, they can come forward now. Mr. Patton, is there anyone in the digital waiting room that wishes to speak in support of the application?
Your Worship, we just have another person who will be speaking.
Okay. So then I'm going to ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in opposition or to ask questions of council with respect to the application. You may come forward, and I'll recognize whoever. Mr. Kidd, please come forward. I need your name and address for the record, please.
Bruce Kidd, 689 Ridge Road North, Ridgeway, Ontario, as you can see by what I'm wearing. Anyway, I'm hoping the people behind me can hear me. If you can, I'll turn around, because...
No, you're going to be addressing council.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councilors, town staff, and of course the minions that make up the voting electorate of this lovely little town we call Ridgeway and Crystal Beach. As you may have noticed, I'm foregoing a modern-day presentation with overhead charts, etc., instead of sticking with old-fashioned paper. And why is that? There are many learned staff here and in the back offices that can interpret studies and data for our decision-making council. My verbiage today goes to the heart of making decisions, not just for us, the people, but for investing in the future of the lives of those that will be doubling our population. And why do I say doubling? It's not just this project that's in mind here. I have every bit of belief that your work, diligent as it is, will go towards doing whatever you see to make this project go. So my concern is how this project dovetails with all the other projects that are going on, as well as with the current people that are in this town. Considering the price point of this particular project, many are likely to be young with now and future families. Did someone say playgrounds? I didn't hear that too much, but I did hear about some green space comments. Bus rider corral points. I did notice on the drawings there looked like there were sidewalks going down Prospect Point and Ridge Road on either side, and that's a good thing. Given the federal and provincial approaches to the increased density and levels of building, there are approximately 50 housing projects on or in the various stages of going on the books over the next 5 years that we've already summarized. Our council, in their defense, has now greater legal challenges to face from other levels of government. So what can we do? More importantly, what can our council do? Infrastructure, infrastructure, infrastructure. What is that composed of? The schooling. And people will say here, well, what has our council got to do with it? That's the DSBN people. No, that's working together with the DSBN people. Health services, roads, water quality in, sewers out, flooding, electrical supply. I don't know how everybody knows what the electrical supply is coming down from Stevensville into our area. Not much in the way of future opens for a lot of towns, houses. Sidewalks, playgrounds, speeding. Oh, did I mention speeding? Traffic flow from 200 or more cars times how many subdivisions are going to be going in over the course of the next 5 to 10 years. Some of these problems are difficult and some are relatively easy to solve. Pulling together the stakeholders with sufficient oversight and public communication can put most of these items to bed. I mentioned young families arriving. Why? Are there better examples of poor planning than our two newest schools? Ridgeway Public and Fort Erie High School, both busting at the seams. As far as I am concerned, and I've been one who's been on previous regions, closing down schools, opening up schools, it can be done, and it can be done with quite good exactness. Obviously, these two schools had some poor planning going on, and there had to be some input from these councils and previous councils to the DSBN. Either they didn't listen, I'm not sure, but it's a mess. And I'm sure with the price point that you've got coming in these particular houses, there's going to be kids. Currently, our planning evaluators look at all aspects of a new development, juxtapositioning into what we minions know as where we live right now. We need to have all projects reviewed in a cumulative bubble, not just individually. Many individuals in this town have suffered from water, parking issues because of expansion. We are not against growth or progress. I know that's going to happen, and as I said already at the outset, we know this project's going to go in some way, shape, or form anyway. I'm not here to knock it down. But it must be measured using small town metrics. We talked about R.V. Anderson on the screen here doing a traffic study and evaluating that 2028 is sufficient time that everything is going to be okay. Well, does anybody know how R.V. Anderson did their evaluations? Is our group of reviewers in our planning department looked over their studies and seen that that's exactly an okay thing? R.V. Anderson, who, if you look at their history, developed their metrics by going to Eglinton Avenue, Lawrence Avenue, going out to Edmonton, Alberta, Kitchener-Waterloo, London, Ontario. where we live, is that the same as those places? No, our metrics need to be small town metrics. That was the traffic study that was done for stacked townhouses that I just mentioned. Reevestock Road, studies paid for and provided to the planners by the developers. Benjamin Franklin in 1736, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. When coincidentally, he was trying to convince the Philadelphia Town Council about what to do about preventing catastrophic fires. And he's smarter than the expense that comes after. Interpretation, smart planning pays for dividends, which is what mostly I'm talking about here tonight. In summary, I have to say on a positive note that I have witnessed a change in this council over the last 8 months. I have attended quite often, the only minion present, as you are already aware, you've seen me here myself, 75% of the last town's council meetings. Infrastructure type questions, statements, and requirements are placed before the planners and the builders more than ever before, and witnessing again tonight here, you were doing that kind of thing, and I kudos to you all for doing that. But I really need to go in deeper than what we have. As I mentioned before, during a time when different provincial bills have diminished some small town councils' powers, oh yeah, did I mention zero tolerance speeding in town? And you notice that's a big thing because we get to see a lot of people walking our dogs around town. And the one thing they talk about is, where's our small town going? You're handling that. But the other thing they all talk about is speeding, 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 traffic volume. Traffic volume is going to happen no matter what because of the increased growth, we know that. But how we control that traffic volume is the big question. The traffic calming studies that have been done and been talked about in regional, I was hoping Mr. Encina was going to be here, has been just that, a lot of talk. And there's a lot of towns that have got best practices already in place that we could develop. And there's a few cameras on some by roads out back that measure speeders. But what's happening in town? Thank you very much for your time, and have a great Valentine's Day.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kidd. But before you walk away, are there any members of council that have any questions? Thank you very much for your comments. Mr. Regal, I think you had your hand up. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
And we need your name and address for the record.
My name is Marvin Regal, 780 Ridge Road North, Ridgeway, Ontario, citizen of 83 years.
Please proceed.
I have an introductory statement by one of the local papers. I didn't make mention here of their names for obvious reasons, but it's what we call a grabber statement. Forget downsizing. Canadian seniors staying in large houses well into their 80s due in part to lack of options. I repeat, lack of options. The town of Fort Erie had some time ago rejected the bid from a local group to use the high school lands and buildings in Ridgeway, where possible, for a seniors complex with a pharmacy and amenable facilities. This would have included an enjoyable strolling area for those of us who remember the days of the 50s and the 80s, with senior accommodation. A quantity of small private homes could have been provided to complement the main theme of this development, designed specifically for seniors, and limited amount of regular-sized homes. The writer is in his 83rd year and was hopeful that the council would override any intention to accept a bid from an out-of-town developer for less than the aforementioned application. Ridgeway does not need another large local area full of homes packed on 35-foot lots, may I change that to read about 16 feet, which to me is unbelievable. But anyways, 35-foot lots with very or little no regard for the trees along Ridge Road North and the southeast corner where a variety of birds have made their nest. Furthermore, this has been the area where seniors would want to come and observe this wooded area for the variety of birds. This area will now be owned by out-of-town residents for the most part, with little regard for what small area of the original high school has meant to us seniors who have lived here most of our lives. The inherent noise of autos and heavy traffic on small roads along Prospect Point and Ridge Road will be hard to live with. I would advise council that the width of Prospect Point Road is hard for 2 cars to pass, let alone heavy equipment. And there's going to be a lot of breakage and problems inherent with this. There are many open fields east of Ridgeway that are being cleared now for development. Why should the town agree with rezoning and at the same time increase the taxes on long-term, lifelong residents to accommodate these developments, as well as future developments with the inherent cost? What are we gaining other than a city division lifestyle, which is not we've been accustomed to all our lives? With the number of proposed housing units in this high school development, as well as the development currently under construction on the west side of Ridge Road, across the street from this development, where is parking for an increased number of vehicles? Furthermore, what efforts are the town and police departments going to make to slow down the speed of traffic, especially along Ridge Road, which frequently and presently experiences speeders from the Nye Road north to Highway 3? It will make it extremely difficult for those of us who live along the stretch of Ridge Road to exit our driveways. We rarely see any police presence monitoring the speeding traffic. Additional comments have been received about the broken windows front and back of the existing high school, which have not been sealed for fire some time ago. That has been addressed tonight from my understanding. There is also concern that this development will contribute to reduced water pressure to areas north of high school, as well as sewer capacity. What type of Ridge Road North widening and Prospect Point can be expected to handle this operation? And my last statement, it may sound like a page from a fairy tale to have a mixture of small retirement homes with an assortment of home frontages to complement the main structure and pathways. I've seen these little homes, and they're absolutely gorgeous. This may even bring down the many residents from Niagara and the Lake to have a look. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Regal. Do any members of council have any questions? So I've got 3. The first is your second statement talked about the town rejecting a bid from a local group with respect to the Fort Erie High School. You understand, when did that occur?
I'm sorry?
When did that occur? When did the town?
That occurred under the employment of Carol Schofield. I believe she was the lady in charge, and it went out to a variety of people. I know that some of the local people in this town are rather inept, and they don't jump on the opportunity. They want to see how the water is flowing before they get involved.
So you may be referring to the town's release of an expression of interest to see whether there were any developers interested in the property, because we were contemplating the possibility of, again, acquiring the property from the school board and then working with the developer. That may be what you're referring to? Because the town has never owned this property, and we haven't received any application to develop this property up until now.
Has the town ever received any inquiries from builders that are prepared to put 25% of all the lots into what we call a retirement situation? Because we've got a lovely one here in Fort Erie. We've got one which is super over on the golf course, and Lord help us that that can be developed because it's away from everything. But to all of a sudden to have a subdivision right across from Ridgeway High School and all the traffic that's going to come there, it's going to change things dramatically.
Okay, well, you asked me a question if we've received any type of application. We haven't. This is the only application we've received. You also made reference to the open fields in Ridgeway being cleared for development, and why should we be agreeing to rezone this property?
Yes.
Are you familiar with Bill 23 and Bill 109 passed by the province last year that compel municipalities to deal with applications for development and provide strict timelines and provide now penalties if we don't meet those timelines? Are you familiar with that?
I have not heard any announcements from council that they want to fight this.
Well, it's not a matter of fighting it. Those were bills passed by the provincial government. There have been reports that the council has received that indicate what our concerns are about those. But that's, I think, in answer to your question. You asked why? Bill 23 and Bill 109. I don't have any other questions, Mr. Regal. I don't know if any other councillors do. If not, thank you very much, sir, and we have your material for the record.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to address council with respect to this matter? Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Good evening.
We need your name and address, Ms. Snyder, for the record.
Okay. Laura Schneider, 668 Ridge Road in Ridgeway, adjacent lot going from Prospect Point Road to Ridge Road, beside the project itself. We good? Did I answer those questions? We got that. We have been in contact with Mr. Bryce Ivanchuk since kind of the onset. I think you have some notes from us with regards to the school and our concerns with this development. We are not against any kind of planning. We know development needs to happen as per your laws just passed by the Ontario government itself, has strategized all of these things into effect. And you have to comply and work with them the best of your ability to make the town work. We agree that you are on point with the development. We do have concerns about infrastructure. Having lived at where we are for 42 years, the amount of power outages is significant. The road not being maintained in front of our property with deep holes, that's a problem, especially with the amount of traffic going by. It ices up and the hole's probably about 4 or 5 inches for about 25 feet along the one part. So we have a lot of concerns with just infrastructure in place to take care of this before other projects come into place. What we have, though, is worked with Mr. Bryce Ivanchuk. There he is. From the beginning, when we were informed that after our property being developed for 75 years from the first building by Mr. Morningstar, who was a councillor in the community, regional, I guess would it be regional at that point, or not regional, but the township. And Mr. Morningstar, he worked with the town worked with the school because there was a playing field, and kids were coming all over on his yard after he built his house in 1946, the original house, which we bought from him 42 years ago. And there was, so the town got together, or the school got together with Mr. Morningstar. I guess he was he Reeve mayor? Was he anyway, regardless. Anyway, they got together and put this fence line up. There weren't any obstructions. The fence line went in as per what I would have thought as a survey, because there was no obstructions. It was agreed upon between two parties, and it went up. They had the land use within that for 35 years, we bought it in 82 from them, and we had the land use for the last 40-some years. So that fence line has been in agreement with both parties for almost 75 years, almost 3/4 of a century. The school was built in, what, 29? So it's early days. Anyway, so we've been in contact with Mr. Ivanchuk because he proposed to us that that fence line was in the wrong place. And guess what? He owns that part on the other side. So we've been maintaining and servicing this piece of property all along. And now we're in a point where we're in talks with Mr. Ivanchuk to try to settle this boundary issue so that we can make this project, help it go forward in a positive way. As such, he's informed me tonight, because our lawyers met with him, with ourselves a couple weeks ago. We haven't heard anything back from our lawyers, but he informs me that he is good to go with the 3 feet. Planners have said that is indicated on the actual drawing of the property. It's showing that 3 foot, and that there would be a privacy fence regardless of the fact that it had gone from townhouses, which would mandate that, versus single-family homes, which didn't. But because, as the planner said to me, coming into this meeting, that there would be, because it is a town condominium kind of project, that would still be in place, that there would need to be a privacy fence established between us and how many neighbors? How many neighbors are along that? No, how many houses would be built along that line?
Well, it doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter, lots. So we got lots of new neighbors. And you know what, that's fine, but a privacy fence between us and, I don't know, 20 new neighbors would be delightful, especially in close, like you said, literally want to share a cup of coffee with me kind of distance. So we're pleased that he has now said that he is going along with the 3-foot fence, correct? He's going along with the...
You're supposed to address us.
Sorry, my apology. So he would be going along with the 3-foot in addition to the land so that our old fence remains, and he will be putting a privacy fence along that whole line, and along that, where that pathway and everything is along the back, he would be putting that privacy fence along that line to address our concerns for a multitude of new neighbors. So we are very pleased and honored that he is going to comply with those thoughts and keep us, in some sort of a private work. Hey, we have the best of everything. We live in this beautiful town. We have everything that we have here, and we've been very blessed to have the piece of property that we've shared. We're not going to live there forever. He's already said that he's got interest in our property, so we'll go from there. But thank you, and thank you, Mr. Ivanchuk, for addressing our privacy needs. We really appreciate that, and to Curtis for helping out with things as well.
Thank you, Ms. Schneider.
Thank you.
Councillor, any questions? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, so just to summarize, you've had a good experience working back and forth, addressing some of these issues. That sounds like what you just told us right now. I have to ask questions, that's why I'm asking
absolutely,
that.
please. There has been challenges, I will not deny that. Communication broke down a few times where we didn't hear anything at all, and we were in a quandary. But I'm just surprised that our attorney from Sullivan Mahoney has not advised us that he's come to agreement with most things in this. And that was about 2.5 weeks ago. We met with our attorney, and we have heard nothing back, yet he has just informed us prior to the meeting that he has already agreed to most of those points, and the planner has said the things. So he's, as far as I'm concerned, and what he's said tonight comes to fruition, he's done by what he said he would do.
Thank you very much for sharing that, and I hope you give a call to your lawyer tomorrow.
Don't you worry about that, because that's a mystery.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Anyone else? Councillor Noyes.
Well, thank you, Mayor Redekop. How high is this privacy fence?
Well, the town itself has a bylaw for 7.5 feet. That's your in-house, correct, Curtis? I think that's, the in-house is 7.5 feet. We had requested a higher fence because we said there's going to be very short back lots in those houses, as you were addressing, Councillor. There's very short back lots. So if someone was standing on possibly a 4-foot deck, It's pretty easy for a 5-foot person just to look over, standing on a 4-foot deck over a 7'5" fence. So we had requested a 9-foot fence along that perimeter if the town would go along with it from a variance kind of thing. So that's what we were looking at, is a privacy fence along that area to break it up.
Okay, thank you. I didn't think that it was as high as you said it was going to be, 7.5. My only concern is, have you thought about how this is going to, a fence that is, let's say, 9 feet?
Yep.
Which is think of what you want.
Well, okay, it isn't going to be a 9-foot fence, so let's.
It's not going to be a 9.
Yeah, so we agreed in the letter to the town that it would be 7.5 or whatever they came up with.
Okay, so then if it's not 9 feet, I'm not going to ask my question.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Ms. Schneider.
Thanks very much for your time, council.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address council? Mr. Parazator, please come forward. Good evening.
Name, George Parazator, 986 Ridge Road North. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but just a couple points came up. Number one, the recent housekeeping amendment is going to be allow most zoning areas to increase density up to 4 units. This here project has high density now, and I think parts of it would allow for additional accessory apartments, further increasing the density. So I think it might be wise to reduce the density now to take care of the possible increase allowed by the housekeeping amendment. Just that comment for there. I think this here whole public meeting is too early. In my opinion, it's not a complete application yet. Not all the property has been accounted for. I think the one section, the high school is. From my personal experience, and they want to know at the time what all the property is going to be used for before they consider it complete. And the other is, I don't think the EIS has been done, and that was another one of the conditions for a complete application in any regard. So I think from the public point of view, we can't make comments that might be relevant to this. If I'm wrong in that, I could stand to be corrected. That's it.
Yeah, just with respect to the EIS, there was an EIS, and now there's been some further communications from the consultant with respect to the wooded area down in the south portion between Prospect Point Road and the high school. And that's where the issue is about the red-headed woodpecker.
Well, regardless of where the area is, you're made to complete the application, EIS study on the complete property as such. So prior to a complete application being accepted. So, and plus what's going to happen where the one block where the high school is. Been told from the planning, we want to know at the same time. They don't want to leave it open at the time. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Parazator. Any questions of Mr. Parazator? Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else wish to address council? Mr. Patton, you mentioned that there was somebody in the digital waiting room that you thought would want to address council on this?
No, Your Worship, it's from an outside consulting or company.
Oh, okay, that's with respect to the development charges memo. Okay. One last question. Anyone else wishing to address council on this matter? Mr. Todd, have we received any late communications other than the ones that have already been provided from Mr. Regal and from Ms. Schneider?
Yes, Your Worship. We received 2 other written comments, one from Brody Mosher, 676 Prospect Point Road North.
Could you say that again?
Brody Mosher,
Yes.
676 Prospect Point Road North, and John H. Perham, 3625 Hazel Street. Those comments have been forwarded to council and planning staff to be considered included in a future staff report.
And they're part of the record. Yes. Then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and that is going to take us then to PDS 05-2024. Have a mover for that? Councillor Dubanow. So that's on the floor for any questions or comments. You folks may want to stick around if you're here for this, because we're dealing with the information report the council has received from staff. Just provides us with an opportunity to ask questions and to make comments with respect to the application, and so that staff will be aware of what our concerns are, and you'll be able to hear what staff tells us in return. Councillor Noyes, you had your hand up?
Yes, Mayor. Just a few questions. One that wasn't really mentioned about the capacity of the sewer, that there's going to be a holding provision. And that hasn't been mentioned at all. The capacity for the sewer?
Well, are you asking?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, where do we see this going in regard to the pumping, the Niagara Road pumping station? Since it wasn't really mentioned?
So Ms. Dilwaria will comment on that.
Your Worship, through you to the councillor, it's mentioned in the report in the regional comments that there is a capacity issue. This is an information report, and when we will bring the recommendation report, we would be requesting a holding provision. But those comments are outlined in the regional comments.
My question to that, is the developer aware that there may be a capacity issue?
Ms. Dilwaria?
Yes, Your Worship. Yes, Councillor, the developer is aware of that, yes.
Thank you. My other question is going to go towards the park. And so one of the presenters did talk about you have to look at the whole picture. There's a huge development just on the other side of Ridge Road North. That's also looking at, I can't remember the number, but I think it was over 100, plus an apartment building and things like that. That's just down the street from that. I don't think there was any real park plan, like not a real park plan for that. And now
Yeah, there is a park plan, and we dealt with that when we dealt with the application from Ridge Oak or whatever it's called. And there's been land set aside for that, but Ms. Dilwaria, maybe you can speak to that.
Yes, Your Worship. So there was a park that was planned as part of the Royal Ridge Phase 2, and the size of that park was 0.16 hectare, which translates to about 0.37 hectares, something close to that. But a park was planned for that development.
Yes, I am aware of that because we saw it on the picture. What kind of park is that planned for?
Ms. Dilwaria, has that been determined?
Not yet, Your Worship. We got the park as part of the subdivision, but we haven't actually done the detailed analysis, what kind of infrastructure would be going into that park. And we are also undertaking our Parks and Open Space Master Plan, so the more detailed review of that park can be done at that stage.
And thank you, through you, Mayor. I am concerned that, like, I did see the park that's on that green area there, because there's a lot of buildings going on, a lot of houses going on, and I'm hoping we're looking at that park as being a community park as opposed to, a very small park. In regards to the backyard, I do have some concerns that the size of the backyards where the townhouses meet each other, where there's a shared backyard. I am concerned about that. And hopefully buyer beware, so to speak, and I would like to know how that's going to accommodate a swale too. I will say that in Black Creek, there's some areas are like that, and the neighbors actually really enjoy it. They have movie night and everything else in that shared green space, so to speak, and they use it very well. So in that particular incident, it works out very well. My last question is about the schools. Like, I know we had a response. saying no objections, and I think I have yet to see in the last probably 15 plans of subdivision for this town that we've had anything but no objections, no objections, no objections. I'm really wondering, do we need to sit down with the school board and say, okay, when you add all this together, you may not have no objections here, but when you kind of start adding all the numbers together and all the developments that we're planning, is there a plan, and can you tell us about it if all these developments go forward? I do think the schools, we already see that the capacity has already been reached and overreached. So I'm just wondering, how can we make sure that?
Yeah, Mr. McQueen, can you just provide a little bit of background on your discussions with the school board?
Sure, through the chair to Councillor Noyes. So we've had discussions with both the Catholic board and the public board. The Catholic board does have capacity in their existing schools. The DSBN, however, is over capacity in the schools they currently have. So these plans of subdivision and applications are sent to DSBN. They're running calculations on what their growth projections are for school-aged kids that will be entering into the system over like a longer time horizon. And unfortunately, it takes them some time to get Ministry of Education approval for expansion, but we have had discussions with them about expanding in some of the schools, the existing schools, and at some point, the prospect for a new school in Fort Erie if the growth projections dictate that. So we have had pretty productive discussions with them, so they are aware, and they are provisioning for this level of growth for Fort Erie. Just it's a longer process for them to get ministerial approval to move forward with some of the projects.
Thank you for that, because we would hate to see more and more and more portables going up everywhere. Thank you.
Any other members of council? Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Your Worship. And through you, I believe that the Traffic Coordinating Committee did identify both Ridge Road and Prospect Point Road in the top 20 roads of issue with the NRP as a list of enforcement areas. And I believe that came out of the minutes that we were presented last month in our meetings. I'm just wondering if there's any further report from the NRP and whether they will be continuing enforcement on those roads.
Mr. Waltz, do you, can you make any comments on that?
Mr. Mayor, Councillor Flagg is correct. I believe they were in the top 20. We do have a TCC meeting scheduled for next week, Councillor Noyes? Very soon. And we can certainly bring these roads up at that meeting.
Councillor Flagg?
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Dubanow.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And just a few quick comments. With this being an information report, this will be coming back to us as a recommendation report in the future. So the input from the public during the public meeting today, as well as from council, is going to take that into account. I'm curious where this goes. I'm very curious about the price point that was mentioned. You know, just anecdotally, there was once a time where you could buy a house in Fort Erie for, you know, $60,000, and it wasn't that long ago. 60. Well, that's even going further back. But then we went into a crazy phase where after 2016, you couldn't even buy a wartime on Aberdeen for less than $500,000. So to hear a developer who's coming here today saying that they're actually talking about attainable housing, something $499 in that range, it may sound a lot from a historical perspective of what Fort Erie has been accustomed to prior to 2016, but this day and age, it's really hard to kind of look at that and scoff at it. It's definitely a price range we have not seen for residential new construction in quite some time. I do think that the lot fabric within the individual units within the condominium side, I think we need to work on that and flesh it out. I think some of the lots may be a little too narrow, but I think we can accommodate what the municipality is looking for, as well as what the developer is looking for, maybe by getting some semis in there and getting creative on the sizing. That might even help us to have, housing that's even more attainable, perhaps even lower than that mark that they're going for. So I'm going to be supporting the information report this evening. I think we've had a really good discussion. I think we've got a lot of info from the public. There's been good discussion from council, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes, particularly the environmental concern on the one edge of the property. Hopefully we get that sorted out at the time of a recommendation report coming forward, so that there's at least some certainty of where this is going, so that we don't have that sword hanging over the developer's head. So those were just my comments, Your Worship. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. Anyone else? Sorry, Councillor Lewis.
I'll wade into this one. I will be supporting the recommendation report tonight. I think council has raised some questions, as have a number of residents from the immediate neighborhood. But I think staff have heard them. I'm looking forward to seeing what the recommendation is from staff, and just wanted to.
Okay, well, when your hand goes up, we'll know. Ms. Dilwari, I just want to confirm that there's been a lot of discussion between the town staff and the proponent for this development. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Worship.
And my understanding is there's a lot of potential changes that have been discussed with respect to things like lot size, mix of housing, perhaps design of the buildings.
Yes, Your Worship. We have been having continuous discussion with the applicant regarding the mix of housing, the size of the dwellings, etc. Yes.
Okay, and all of that will be reflected in the ultimate recommendation report that this council receives from staff?
That's correct, Your Worship.
Along with some of the, along with the concerns expressed by those who attended the meeting and information that we've received either at the open house or through other communications?
Yes, Your Worship. There would be a section in the recommendation report that would talk about the concerns that were raised tonight, and we would provide a response to those questions.
And just one final question. I have a concern, and my understanding is that you have a concern about the proposed lot size within the Block 50, I think it is.
Yes, Your Worship, we are concerned about the lots which have a frontage of 7.6 meters, which is really small, and Fort Erie hasn't seen such smaller lots. And we have been having discussions with the applicant to try to address that concern. And we will be able to reach a solution that would be favorable to the town as well as to the applicant.
Yeah, okay, and although I'm not supposed to comment, I can tell you I don't favor 7.64 meter frontage lots. Okay, I've just violated the rule about the chair. So,
If you were allowed to, you would have said
that. Yeah, if I could, I would have said that. Okay, I'm going to call the question then with respect to the information report, that we accept this for information purposes. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. Now you folks may leave, sorry. Okay, that, yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a 5-minute break, let the folks move out if they wish, and then we'll come to the consent agenda. And so we'll be back here at 7:48. Okay, I'm going to call this meeting back to order, and we're at the consent agenda. Are there any items that anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? 8.2 is definitely going to be removed. I'm asking for that to be removed. Are there any other items? If not, can I have a mover? Councillor McDermott. Any questions with respect to any of the items in the consent agenda? Councillor Christensen.
This is more of a comment, Your Worship. I wanted to, wait a minute, wrong side. With respect to item 8.5, ILLS-01-2024, with regard to the Corporate Records and Information Management Program and Policy Update. This is something, and my presence on the library board probably indicates that information management is a critical piece of the infrastructure of any organization. I was delighted to see the report and to see the work that is being led by our clerk. And kudos to the staff for moving us forward and ensuring that our, and I understand from conversation with the clerk, our hard copy records are good, but we will now have a digital record system that will be eventually absolutely 21st century and moving forward.
You know, Councillor Christensen, I had a feeling this report would really excite you.
Yeah, it would just, I loved it. Sorry.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. First, my question is about the memorandum from Kelly in regards to the Fort Erie Tennis Club.
That's been taken out of the agenda. That's been taken out of the consent agenda. We're going to deal with that separately.
Oh, okay. Then my next question is 8.3, the revised physician recruitment, retention, and medical education one. I'm all for it. But I just wanted to clarify, because there's, okay, we're looking at equipment of 25,000 now, not 50,000.
Yeah, and so we've had some discussions with the CAO, so there are some modifications with respect to that. Can you go into that, Mr. McQueen? Some changes that are being proposed when it comes to the bylaw stage.
Thank you. Through the mayor to Councillor Noyes. Yeah, we've gone back through. I think there's just some areas for a bit of clarification in section 2A, 2A2, adding a comment that says enter into agreements up to $10,000 with respect to the approval of delegated authority. The section that you were referring to, we've changed to 25,000 based on feedback from the Community Health Services Committee. They felt that that was fair, really was going to be focused on equipment for expansion of an existing practice or for supporting a new physician. So it was a little tighter requirement. It wasn't quite so vague. And that was just some of the feedback we got from the committee and I think from council as well. So we'll make those changes in the program and we'll make sure that it's reflected in the bylaw when we bring the bylaw forward.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, and I appreciate that. The only other thing, and I understand that this is going to be reviewed, like it's not just going to be an automatic, here's your $25,000 and, you know, let us know what you're buying, that there's going to be some review of what the requests are. And I would have just felt better if it said medical equipment as opposed to just basic equipment. I don't think we should be paying for desks and telephones and stuff. I wished it would have said medical equipment. I know there's some description in there about equipment needed to provide services, but I could argue that the telephone is needed or a desk is needed. But anyway, I would have preferred that medical equipment or.
I think that is the intent. Mr. McQueen, can you comment on that?
Yeah, that's a good point. We will make reference to medical equipment. We'll correct that.
Anything further, Councillor Noyes?
No, that's all for.
Anyone else? Mr. Flagg, Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Your Worship. And continuing on with that same report, under Appendix 1, Section 4, Delegated Authority, it again talks about under $10,000, et cetera, which maybe changing 25, it's irrelevant for my question. It goes on and talks about bringing the staff memorandum to council in closed section. I'm just wondering why we would be bringing something that you're already funding and approving into closed session, and why we wouldn't bring it into open.
Yeah, I think the intention is, these are for things over 10,000.
Yeah,
Mr. McQueen.
Through the chair to Councillor Flagg, we're going to make that revision because it, I think, was referencing an earlier version of the report where those would have come back, and I think we just, it's not clear. So we're going to propose to remove the last paragraph that says within 30 days of final execution. We'll remove that sentence entirely, and so then it meets the definition that we outlined above with the delegated authority. So those two will match, which they didn't. So thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. McQueen, we'd also talked about, since this is a grant program and we have other grant programs, which I don't think include any type of appeal, have you got any comments about whether section 3B, which deals with appeals, should be removed?
Through the chair to the mayor, it's a section that historically existed in the agreement, and so we didn't remove it, but there certainly is the opportunity for anybody to come forward to council or ourselves to discuss any sort of appeal. So with that recommendation, we would probably propose to remove 3B in its entirety. Not that there aren't avenues for appeal, it just shouldn't likely be outlined in the grant program.
And also, we've had some discussions with respect to the return for service and how that relates to new physicians agreeing that they would attempt to be enrolled in urgent care with Niagara Health if they qualify. And so there have been some proposed suggestions for changes on those. Is that correct? Being the number of hours that you would have to work in urgent care to qualify for a reduction of return for service, and how that relates to the 3.5 days per week.
Through you, we have looked at section, for everyone's viewing reference, it's section 3C1. It does make reference to the introduction to the health medical affairs personnel at Niagara Health for taking on those urgent care shifts. And we would propose that we add into the program change that physicians who provide 3 urgent care shifts per month would be eligible for sort of a prorated reduction in the return of service in that arrangement. So they could reduce their return of service by providing those additional shifts with the urgent care center. So we'll have to figure out a reporting mechanism back to us to figure out how to prorate the request for a reduction in return of service if it was requested.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions in the consent agenda items that are on the floor? Councillor Noyes?
Going back to the physician recruitment, and I'm sorry I didn't catch that. With the urgent care shifts, it has to be in like in our town, not just anywhere with the NHS, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then I'll call a vote on the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. And can I have a mover for item 8.2? Councillor Flagg? So that's on the floor. Councillor Noyes, you said you wanted to speak to that?
Yes. I think the irony of this whole thing is that we started off with the request for 5 courts for $600,000. We're now getting a quote for 4 courts for $600,000. So we have 1 less court, but the same amount of money requested. I think that's ironic where we all started. Just a bit of background, that 1.5 years ago, one of the courts was going to be a pickleball court, not a tennis court. Now that, in the last request, they wanted that pickleball court to become a tennis court again. We still don't know, and I understand that's off the, we're not talking about the Court 7 anymore. That's going to be the Parks and Open Space Master Plan discussion. We still don't know what the lease arrangement is, the public-private. We still don't know what that is. we still don't even know if the tennis club is even interested in continuing an arrangement where there is a large public access. I don't know if, do we know any of that yet? Do we have any information?
Well, Councillor Noyes, I mean, the reality is it's publicly owned facility. Whether the tennis club wants to participate or not participate, that's up to them. And if they don't want to participate in an agreement, then it's pretty simple. It's completely public access.
Okay. I'm just thinking if they do maintain the clay courts and they do maintain the courts, they do that, and that's a service that they provide to the town. And I'm just wondering if they decide that they don't want to do it. Well, how's that going to affect our manpower? I'm assuming they will want to continue, but that's a question we should have answered at some point. I saw the breakdown. I mean, I can make numbers add up to 600,000 too. So I can't really argue it. I can't find anything that describes it enough. I know now that there's fencing and there's $30,000 for landscaping. I don't think there's a shrub anywhere near the tennis courts. I could be wrong, but I don't know where the 30,000 is going to come from. And I'm going to trust that staff are going to try to be very diligent in keeping these costs down, that we don't reach the $600,000. And I do hope that we are going to get an RFP from a number of people who do the acrylic courts. I do agree that there should be 4 acrylic courts. I'm not going to argue that point anymore. That ball has been played. That's a good one.
That ball has been volleyed.
Okay, so I had to come up with some analogy. But I do hope it doesn't come back to us as a single source, and I do hope that we find out what extent does this have to be worked? Like, do the courts have to be completely redone, or can they be patching, or asphalt over the that type of thing? And I'm hoping that we do it. But and I really don't want to see a lot of extras. Say, oh, we have $30,000 for landscaping, so let's go buy some trees and some shrubs, et cetera, et cetera. I understand there may be some lawn maintenance that has to be done when they put the courts in and take the courts out. And I do hope that we actually look at the fencing to see what actually has to be removed. Does it make sense? The interesting part is that Court 7 that nobody's using and hasn't used for a long time has a new fencing, or has the newer fencing. Don't know why. The other thought is, and then it doesn't come up in this report, I will say I was impressed with the handicap washroom, but it's totally not, it's connected but not connected to the actual clubhouse. But I don't really think they use that clubhouse as a clubhouse. It's so tiny. I think they're basically using it for bathroom storage, probably a cold fridge or something like that. But that building is not accessible. And I don't know how many town facilities we have that are not accessible. That one is not accessible. But the bathroom is, but it's not really part of that. Again, I don't like how we got here, but I think we do have to move forward. I am going to support it, but I will be shaking my head if we spend the $600,000 and we have a lot of extras that aren't really needed to do this. And I do also know, when I talked to Sean earlier, a while ago, and this is a plus, that the tennis club did allow Fort Erie High School to play on it. I don't know if there were certain hours that the students from Fort Erie High School could come and play. And I understand that they will, part of the lease arrangement, whatever it is, will hopefully include the Fort Erie Academy, that they will allow certain hours for the Fort Erie Academy students to join. So I think that's all positive. I'm hoping that we continue to move in the right direction on this. But again, I really don't like how we got there, and a lot of unknowns that we're currently having. Thank you.
Mr. Walsh, with respect to the amount in your memo, the $600,000, and the concern about excessive sums being spent just because they're in the budget, do you have any comments?
Mr. Mayor, what we're doing essentially is replacing what's there. We have no plans to incorporate extraneous furniture or new landscaping. Everything is based on a replacement type issue.
Okay. Any other questions or comments by anyone on this? Councillor Noyes?
Well, yeah, and I get that, the replacement, but I mean, I don't want to see those picnic tables replaced. I don't want to see the benches replaced. I mean,
Well, Councillor Noyes, in fairness, if they don't need to be replaced, they won't be replaced. But if they need to be replaced, it's like every other park that we have, we would replace them. And I think we have to give some latitude to staff. They've been good managers of the park so far, and I would like to think that they'll continue to do that.
and again, if they're not safe to use, or they're breaking down, yes. But if it's another reason, just because newer is better, I don't get that. The other thing too is I would say that because of the nice weather we're having right now, I don't know if there's anybody playing tennis, but I will say that there one court that is not safe to play on, the one closest to Gilmore Road, probably should be closed off because it's not safe.
Councillor McDermott, would you mind taking over the chair because I have a motion with respect to this?
Go ahead, Your Worship.
So I would like to move that council receives the memorandum from Kelly Walsh regarding the Oaks Park tennis courts, and that council lifts the hold on proceeding with reconstruction of the tennis courts as part of the 2024 capital projects budget, and that would be 4 courts, not 5, and that staff notify the Fort Erie Tennis Club that the new agreement with respect to use of the tennis courts going forward will emphasize public use, subject to use by the tennis club for its programs, activities, and tournaments. And so that's, I want to get this moving forward. I expect that staff will be prudent in the expenditures that they make. They will obtain the information necessary to ensure that they do a reconstruction of these courts where necessary, not reconstruction if not necessary, and then at least we can move forward. These have been the premier courts in Fort Erie for as long as I can remember, and that goes back a lot longer than I'd like to acknowledge. And so, there may be some other things that staff may have to consider and recommend to us in terms of public use of these courts, because they are expensive and they will be the best tennis courts in town. So I'm hoping that council will support this so we can move this forward. And there you have it, Chair.
Could I have a seconder for that motion?
Don't need one in committee.
Oh, you don't? I believe you told me I did earlier.
Pardon?
That's why I asked.
Oh, so, Councillor McDermott, it's so rarely that any of you folks listen to me. I'm surprised that you did.
Yeah, we pay attention. Yeah, we do.
So, you caught me.
Are there any comments or questions? Councillor Noyes.
My only question is about the lease. Does that come back to council?
I'm sorry?
The lease.
Yes, of course.
Okay, because somewhere in one of the statements, it says there was already a new lease signed.
No, there have been discussions of the lease at various stages in the land committee, and so that's been reflected in the minutes. But this agreement has to come back to council, and it will come back, and I believe I've said that in response to your question of a similar nature in the past.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? All in favor? Carried. You get the chair back now, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott, and then I'm going to just pass this over to Councillor Dubanow because we're at Planning and Development Services.
Yes, we are, Your Worship. Excuse me, Planning and Development Services is in session for the evening. We do have a presentation this evening from Rachel Daniels, our Senior Environmental Planner. There she is. Thank you very much, Ms. Daniels. Please proceed whenever you're ready.
Environmental planner here at the town. The purpose of today's presentation is to summarize the information presented within report PDS 06-2024, being a recommendation report for updates to bylaw 6004, a bylaw to regulate the destruction, injury, and harvesting of trees in the town of Fort Erie. I'll begin today's presentation with the relevant background information relating to the initiation of amendments relating to the existing bylaw. I will then provide an overview of the items discussed during the November 27th information report and public meeting, and any adjustments that have been made since that time. Lastly, I'll provide a summary of the fines, permit fees, and staffing recommendations. So the town's existing tree bylaw regulates the destruction, injury, and harvesting of trees, covering an area between 0.5 hectares and 1 hectare in areas that are considered to be woodlands. The Niagara Region Woodland Conservation Bylaw 2020-79 governs the cutting of trees in woodlands greater than 1 hectare, which is the smallest size woodland upper tier municipalities are authorized to regulate under the Municipal Act. Both bylaws include the same definition of woodlands, derived from the Forestry Act definition, in which a treed area must meet a specified density in order to be considered a woodland. Under the town's existing tree bylaw passed by council in 2004, no permits have ever been issued and only 1 permit has recently been applied for. The existing bylaw is rarely applicable as it only applies to woodlands between 0.5 and 1 hectare. As such, minimal town staffing resources have been required under the existing bylaw. However, town staff do frequently request the assistance of the regional forester, who have expertise in conducting woodland density assessments. In response to several accounts of tree clearing occurring with the town, council directed staff on May 29th, 2023, to provide council with a memo regarding bylaw 6004, hereafter known as the tree bylaw. Following the completion of that memo, council authorized staff on August 28th, 2023 to initiate a review and amendment to the tree bylaw in accordance with the Municipal Act of Ontario, as outlined in initiation report number PDS 54/2023. Staff then held an open house on September 25th, 2023 to gain preliminary feedback from residents and stakeholders. And on November 27th, 2023, council received for information purposes information report PDS 78/2023, and a public meeting was also held on this date. So the following slides will provide a summary of what was discussed during the information report and any changes that have occurred since. The first topic will be regulation approach. So staff recommend the following trees are regulated under an amended bylaw. To trees of any size within the natural heritage system, to trees greater than or equal to 30 centimeters DBH, which is diameter at breast height, so the diameter of a tree measured 1.4 meters above the ground within the urban boundary. To trees designated as a heritage tree under Part 4, Part 5 of the Ontario Heritage Act. To trees of any size located on lands upon which there is a pending application for a plan of subdivision, plan of condominium, severance or consent, an official plan amendment, zoning bylaw amendment, minor variance, or site plan approval. To trees of any size located on lands to which there has been a pre-consultation meeting held with the town for the previously mentioned applications, and the meeting was held no more than 1 year prior. To trees of any size identified as a tree in a tree preservation plan submitted as part of a development application, as well as to replacement trees planted as a requirement of a permit issued under this bylaw. Councils and members of the public expressed concerns surrounding the previously proposed regulation of 50 centimeter DBH and asked for clarification on how 50 centimeters was derived. Staff provided clarification at the time that 50 centimeters was chosen as it was felt that this diameter threshold would serve to regulate larger, older trees that residents had expressed concerns over. Several members of the public also expressed concerns with the 50 centimeter DBH threshold and provided comments that they would like to see anywhere from 10 centimeter to 20 centimeter DBH. As a result of these comments and previous comments made by the town's Environmental Advisory Committee, the town staff recommended that the threshold for individual tree regulation within the urban boundary is lowered to 30 centimeters from the previously proposed 50 centimeters. Council also requested that staff look into whether properties greater than 2.02 hectares that are proposed to be regulated under the new bylaw will also include those that are not currently zoned as residential. After further consideration, town staff have reviewed this clause and have excluded it from the draft bylaw. It is staff's opinion the reduction of the DBH threshold for regulated trees inside of the urban boundary from 50 to 30 will provide sufficient protection of canopy coverage within the urban boundary. Staff have concluded that the regulation of lands 2.0 hectares or greater does not provide significant additional protection for the urban canopy, and the removal of this clause will help to simplify the process for landowners and staff. Council also noted the importance of regulating boundary trees within the urban boundary. These are trees with shared ownership between two properties. Staff does not recommend the regulation of all boundary trees within the bylaw. However, all trees greater than 30 centimeters DBH will be regulated within the urban boundary regardless of ownership. Staff feel that this approach will regulate trees with larger diameters that are most disputed by residents. And lastly, Council inquired as to what areas would be included within the natural heritage system. Staff have included a schedule of these areas within the draft bylaw for consideration. The schedule was compiled based on the town's environmental conservation areas, environmental protection areas, hazard areas, dune protection areas, in addition to areas identified in the regional official plan as significant woodland, and other wetland. You'll see on the screen here an image of the schedule that was presented in the bylaw. Green areas on the slide are those areas that are considered part of the natural heritage system. The black outline depicts areas inside the urban boundary. This schedule will be continually updated on the town's website to ensure alignment with any changes to these boundaries that arise as a result of development application or changes to boundaries such as provincially significant wetlands through the province. Staff have recommended 18 exemptions within the draft bylaw as compared to the 20 exemptions previously proposed. These exemptions are consistent with other tree bylaws within the province, 10 of which are mandatory under the Municipal Act. Staff have since recommended the removal of 2 exemptions from the bylaw as follows. First being the injury or destruction of invasive tree species, including white mulberry, common buckthorn, glossy buckthorn, and black alder. In addition to the harvest of trees by the owner of a property for the purpose of heating a dwelling for personal use, provided that such activity is conducted consistent with good forestry practices, and no more than 10 trees per hectare are harvested, injured, or destroyed in a calendar year. Staff's recommendation is that these clauses are removed from the exemptions and are instead now included within the exceptions section of the bylaw. Please note the difference between exemptions and exceptions. The 18 clauses found within the exemption section of the bylaw are immediately exempt from the bylaw, whereas the 2 clauses previously mentioned, included under the exception section, will require a written exception letter from the town, confirming that the trees meet the requirements under those sections. Staff recommend this approach to ensure that the harvesting of trees and the invasive species clauses are not utilized for clearing prior to development applications. Council also inquired as to whether there was any consideration given to exemptions for farmers who are tenants as opposed to those who are owners of the land. Staff are recommending that property owners are the primary permit holders, and any tenants applying for permit applications will require the signature of the property owner to act as an agent on the file. This is the last slide of information presented during the information report. So within private tree bylaws throughout the province, tree compensation is a common condition of permit approval. Compensation refers to the planting of replacement trees for every tree that is removed under the authority of a permit. Council expressed concerns on November 27 that the planting of replacement trees in the form of saplings was not an adequate replacement value for large older trees that are removed under the authority of a permit. Staff provided information regarding the minimum size requirements for replacement plantings, and based on discussion with the town's arborist since then, have adjusted the minimum size from 30 millimeters to 50 millimeters, 50 millimeter caliper deciduous tree, or a 150 centimeter height coniferous tree in a 5-gallon container. And these practices align with the current practices from the Parks Department. Staff recommend replacement ratios on Schedule D of the draft bylaw that scale up depending on the size of the tree removed, which remain consistent with those presented on November 27th. And they also remain consistent with other approaches throughout the province, particularly Niagara-on-the-Lake. Replacement plantings are typically always preferred on the subject property to which the permit is issued for. However, should replacement plantings not be able to be accommodated on the subject property, a cash in lieu amount of $1,000 per tree may be paid to the town for natural feature enhancement within the town. This has been adjusted from the previously proposed amount of $500 after discussion with the town's Parks Department. The following sections depict information not previously discussed on the November 27th public council meeting, the first being the schedule of administrative monetary penalties. Since the time of information report, staff have finalized the recommendations associated with AMPs and have included a schedule of such penalties in Schedule A of the bylaw. Council noted the importance of having high fines for large-scale tree clearing that has been occurring within the town. Staff have compiled a recommended schedule of AMPs in the draft bylaw that, when applied to a large-scale tree clearing event, can result in fines that staff feel would address council's concern. Staff also have the ability to lay a charge under the Provincial Offences Act for any larger significant occurrences. The penalties listed within this table, particularly the fines of $1,500, are more than what other municipalities currently charge under AMPs. For example, Burlington's AMPs fine for tree removal without a permit is $680. Peterborough's penalties are $500 on the first day and $750 each day thereafter. Staff have listened to remarks from both council and the public and the need for high fines, and have chosen the amount of $1,500 in order to address these comments. A penalty of $1,500 is aligned with the current penalty under the town's short-term rental bylaw for operating without a license. Move over to permit fees next. Staff have recommended a permit fee schedule within the draft bylaw that will aid in offsetting costs associated with administering the bylaw. Low permit fees for owners who are individuals are recommended in order to obtain increased compliance from residents. Recommended fees were derived from other municipal tree bylaws within Southern Ontario and adjusted to reflect the increased staff review time for applications within the natural heritage system. The fees included within the draft bylaw schedules will be used to update the town's consolidated schedule of fees and charges through amendments to bylaw 176, 2023. The revenue of any administrative monetary penalties that are issued may also be used to offset both the cost of staff resourcing and to contribute to the overall enhancement of the town's tree projects and improved tree canopy. Last item, we'll look at staffing and resources. So if accepted by council, a new tree bylaw with greater tree protections and technical specifications would necessitate the need for additional staffing to assist with the administration of the bylaw, permitting, and enforcement. Staff recommends that one additional staff member with a background in arboriculture or forestry, preferably an ISA certified arborist, be obtained. This staff member's primary responsibilities would be to lead administration and permitting efforts associated with the bylaw. Should time allow, the staff member may also be able to support the town's arborist to manage other tree-related priorities and projects. For example, planting, maintenance, inspection, annual operations, and storm recovery. Municipalities with comparable bylaws, including the Niagara-on-the-Lake, City of Burlington, City of Oakville, City of Peterborough, and City of Toronto, all have staff with specializations in urban forestry managing their bylaw. Staff does not recommend the implementation of this bylaw without this additional staff member. Staff would further rely on municipal enforcement officers, particularly the junior MLEO identified in the 2024 supplemental budget, to assist with after-hour complaint investigations and orders, enforce the bylaw, and provide assistance with administering the bylaw. Lastly, staff also recommend that the town's senior environmental planner be involved in areas where there are proposed development applications to ensure coordination. However, it is not recommended that the bylaw is primarily administered by this staff member, as an environmental planner does not typically have the expertise in urban forestry needed to adequately administer the bylaw. Though staff feel that this approach would provide adequate staffing to administer and enforce the proposed bylaw, it is recommended that staffing be reevaluated after a period of 6 months in order to determine if additional resourcing is required. Conclusion, planning staff are in support of the draft bylaw amendments found in Appendix 1 in order to regulate trees within the natural heritage system within the municipal boundary and trees greater than 30 centimeter DBH within the urban boundary. This concludes my presentation today. Staff welcome any discussion that arises from the report and draft bylaw. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Daniels. This is an excellent report, and the work that you've done has been excellent. Sorry.
That's okay. I've made that same mistake too, where you go into infrastructure services and then you want to jump in. I totally understand where you're coming from. Your Worship, I think you have some comments or some questions?
Yeah, thank you for that excellent report and all of the work that you've done. I know that the environmental community has been very happy with your work, and we'll miss you. Let me say that. Chair, if I might, so as I understand it, if the tree is outside the urban area boundary, then if it's within a environmental protected area or a natural heritage area, then they have to apply for a permit. Is that correct?
Through your chair, that's correct, yes.
Doesn't matter what size the natural heritage area is?
Through your chair, no, not currently, as long as it meets the definition of a tree under the bylaw.
So within the urban area boundary, if a parcel, doesn't matter how large the parcel is, this bylaw will apply, and you have to get a permit unless you're exempt or there's an exception. Is that correct?
Through your chair, yes, that's correct. As long as the tree is over 30 centimeter DBH within the urban boundary, you'd be applying for a permit under this bylaw.
And that's 30 centimeters at about 4 feet height or thereabouts?
Yeah, I've provided a visual representation here of what 30 centimeter DBH would look like.
Okay, so that's what's in the middle, or is that?
That's the outside circle. The inside circle is 12.5 centimeter DBH, which is the smallest tree that we would require replacement plantings for.
So if we have so the half hectare thing, that no longer applies. We cover everything. If I might, Chair, so if you're within the urban area boundary and you have a idea that you want to develop your land, but you haven't made an application yet, and you're not in a natural heritage area, the only thing that would apply would be a tree that's that size at 4 feet height. Is that
Through
correct?
you, Chair, that's correct.
So how do we, and maybe this is a question that you can answer, how do we ensure that property owners that have the idea they're going to develop their land and they go ahead and they just cut everything and then then they make application? So they technically haven't violated the law unless they've got trees that are a certain size. They cut everything else down other than the trees that are that size. Technically, they could do that.
Through you, Chair, yes, that is correct.
Is there a remedy for that? Is there a way that we can deal with that?
Through you, Chair, the only remedy to that would be to reduce the size of DBH within the urban boundary in order to regulate smaller DBH trees.
Or I suppose the other possibility is include parcels that are in excess of a certain size.
Through you, Chair, yes, that's correct.
So if you had a 2-acre parcel or a 1 hectare parcel, you can't cut trees down without a permit.
Yes, through you, Chair, that's correct.
That would be a remedy.
That would
Is there
be.
any reason why we haven't done that? Because that seems to be the biggest problem. We've got people that we believe are going to want to develop their land, and they go ahead and they start cutting.
Through you, Chair, the largest concerns that the department heard from council and the public were the protection of the natural heritage system and larger diameter trees within the urban boundary. So to this date, we haven't seen that trees under 30 centimeters have been as big of a priority as the natural heritage system and the larger trees with a bigger DBH. We've also been considering the amount of staff time required in order to enforce a bylaw such as this one, and the inclusion of trees under 30 centimeters would result in increased staff time.
Yeah, Chair, I've got a concern about that because within the last 3 months, there's been a number of parcels that have been cleared. You know that the owner is thinking of doing some type of development application. So I guess I very much support this bylaw, and I don't want to delay it any further, but I'm wondering if between now and the time the bylaw comes forward, there could be some further consideration given by staff to whether we should be including a parcel that's within the urban area boundary that's above a certain size, like 1 hectare maybe. Even that's probably generous, but that maybe is reasonable.
I see Ms. Dollery, she's kind of taking some notes down there, so I think we're good for the discussion side of things. Was there anything else, Your Worship?
No, I'll wait until we get the report on the floor.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. To you, to Rachel. Rachel, thank you for your report. I'm going to go on a little different, on a different limb than the mayor, because, and perhaps I'm reading it wrong, To me, okay, I have a backyard, I live in an urban area, and I have a tree in my backyard. That happens to be 31 centimeters. Can I cut it down if this passes?
Through you, Chair, you would need a permit in order to remove that tree.
So that's the problem I have, is that I have absolutely not a tree on my property. So, and I've talked to a number of people today, actually, think that is really going a little bit too far. That in people's backyards, we're not talking about development, we're not talking about building a new house, we're talking about a tree that happens to be in your backyard that may be healthy or whichever, but for whatever reason, I want it down. I'm allergic to the pollen, I'm allergic to this, or I want to put a pool in there, or, you know, it's too hard to mow around, whatever. I have my own reasons to take it down. Why should I have to have permission?
We can speak to.
Like, what's the problem with me taking down the tree in my backyard?
Through you, Chair, we've brought this information or recommendation report to council as we've heard that there's been concerns expressed by council and the public on the removal of trees within the town. So this bylaw is in response to those concerns.
And how many people attended your open house?
Through you, Chair, there was approximately 30 people that attended the open house. I believe we received comments from 12 in person and 12 online.
Like I talked to probably about 30 or 40 people today. I was actually playing cards and I asked them about the tree bylaw. Everyone that I talked to said they thought it was crazy. That it was like Big Brother being too bad. Like backyard, I pay for my taxes, I pay for my property. You know, it's been here forever or whatever. Why should I have to pay $50? And if you come to me and you say, okay, I pay my $50, you come to me, I want the tree down. I have a good reason. I'm allergic to it. I have to pay you $50 and you guys say no? Could you say, okay, go take some allergy medicine?
Through you, Chair, sorry, can you clarify the question?
Yeah, I have a tree in my backyard. I want it to come down. It's 31 centimeters.
Mm-hmm.
It's healthy. I don't like it and I'm allergic to it. And you tell me I can cut it down, I can't cut it down?
Through you, Chair, there are certain clauses that we've included in the bylaw that are acceptable reasons to take down a tree. Removing a healthy tree because of anything outside of development-related things would need additional clarifications. For example, if it was just because we didn't want to rake the leaves, that's not currently deemed an acceptable reason to ask for an application.
Okay, so let's say you give me permission to take down the tree. Am I then going to have to pay $1,000 for a replacement tree?
Through you, Chair, when you get issued a permit, you have the option of either cash in lieu to the town of $1,000, or you have the ability to plant your own replacement trees as per the schedule that's in Schedule A. Mm-hmm. If you are planting your own trees, you are providing a deposit to the town for each tree to ensure that it survives the maintenance and warranty period of 2 years, and your deposit will be returned.
And how much money is that?
Through you, Chair, it is $250 for individuals and $500 for corporations per tree.
Okay, so now I'm up to $300 to take down my tree. And it's in my backyard that I pay taxes on. I'm going to read you something here. It says, the City of St. Catharines are recommending council scrap a controversial proposed private property tree bylaw after the concept was panned by residents. This is a few years ago. Based on feedback received, there is concern that the bylaw regulating private property trees may have the reverse effect on what is intended. The report from what Municipal Works warns. The concern is residents may proactively remove the trees on their properties before the bylaw commences, and they may also refrain from planting new trees on their properties with fear of the city denying their request to remove them in the future. Staff also contacted other municipalities that have private property tree bylaws and found they have had limited success. So that's just...
Okay, so on a point of order, Chair.
Yes.
We're asking questions of the presenter with respect to her thing. We're way off onto a discussion. This could take place during the time when the report is on the floor, but this is completely inappropriate.
That's fair, Your Worship. Councillor Noyes, do you have a question?
Well, I just wondered, do you have any concerns about that? That people may actually be let's say lightning will strike a lot of trees.
So Chair, again, on a point of order, that is not relative to the delegate, the presentation.
Councillor Noyes, how about we leave that for the report when it comes forward? I know where you're going, but I think that might be more appropriate when we come up to the report. Was there anything else, Councillor Noyes? Fair enough. Are there any other questions? Councillor Flagg?
Thank you, and thank you very much for your presentation. Just wondering, in the administrative penalties, per tree or per action?
Through you, Chair, a number of them are per tree. However, there are some clauses within there that cannot be per tree, for example, obstructing an officer and things along that nature. So some of them have tiered offenses if they're able to be committed over and over again, like not abiding to a work order or something like that. But for example, the removal of a tree does not have a tiered offense because once the tree is gone, it's gone.
If I may continue then.
Yes.
So the removal of a tree, $1,500. Right, injury or destroy a tree, $1,500 is the penalty. But if I take 2 trees down, it's $3,000. Got
Through
it.
you, Chair, that's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flagg. Any other questions? Councillor Lewis?
Yeah, and thank you very much for your presentation. Just a comment.
Questions for the presenter, just so we stay on track.
I'll save my comment then for the report. Thank you for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lewis. Any questions for Ms. Daniels? I do have one question if no members of council do. Thank you very much, Ms. Daniels. We are definitely going to miss you. I understand why you're leaving. I would do the same thing. I am not happy you're leaving, though, so I'm just going to put that on record. I'm just wondering if you could go to the point of your presentation where you had the schedule for replacement trees. The question was coming, Councillor Lewis. Thank you. This is it. So if, Ms. Daniels, if I'm looking at this correctly, so all trees regulated within the urban boundary, the 30 centimeter DBH, we'd be requesting at least 3 replacement trees per tree permit issued. Is that correct?
To you, Chair, yes, that is correct.
Okay. So looking at this here, we would be requesting either, would that be a $250 deposit per tree?
To you, Chair, if you were an individual applying, it would be $250 per tree.
Okay. And cash in lieu would be $1,000 per tree. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
okay.
correct.
So I'm looking here, it would be at least minimum 3 trees. So we're looking at either $750 deposits or $3,000 cash in lieu. The AMPS penalty is $1,500 per tree. What would stop me from saying, to heck with it, I'm just going to chop the tree down and pay $1,500 rather than $3,000 for the town? Does that make sense to you with the way this is laid out?
To you, Chair, I do understand that point. When we were reviewing the AMPS bylaw, we did note that our fees that we are providing, or our fines that we are presenting right now, are almost double of that of any other municipality in Ontario right now, and they are aligned with our short-term rental bylaws as a base point. We have not considered anything over that amount at this time, so if that's something that council would like us to look into.
No, I'm talking about the other way. Would it not make more sense, perhaps, to be a little more reasonable on the cash in lieu or the deposit side of things if we want to encourage compliance, if we want to encourage individuals to actually follow this bylaw? Wouldn't it make more sense to set it up in a way that actually encourages compliance rather than perhaps encourages individuals to just pay the fine and deal with it after?
Through you, Chair, yeah, that's something we can definitely consider. The schedule of fines, or the schedule of replacement trees rather, was derived from other municipal tree bylaws, and it remains a little bit lower than some other municipal tree bylaws within the province. For example, Guelph's is much higher than the one proposed here. This was in line with Niagara on the Lakes to keep it consistent within the region. It's something we can look into to be more aligned with compliance, though.
No, and I appreciate that, and I think that's a fair point. I just, I'll leave the rest of my comments for the report when it comes forward. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, was there something? Yes, go ahead, Councillor Flagg.
Thank you, Chair. Just for some clarity, this does not include the cost of the replacement trees, correct? The 250 goes to the town in case the trees do not survive, but the individual still has to buy the tree and plant the tree.
Through you, Chair, yes, that is correct. So that would add additional costs onto the $750.
Thank you.
And it would require also the maintenance of that tree for 2 years and the costs associated with that.
Costs associated with digging the hole and so forth. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Anything else before? All right. Thank you very much for your presentation this evening. And as I said, sad to see you go. I understand why. But thank you very much for all the work you've done. Thank you.
Of course, it's been a pleasure working here.
So we have no other presentations this evening. However, we do have the report, PDS 06-2024, and that is a bylaw to regulate the destruction, injury, and harvesting of trees in the town of Fort Erie, the recommendation report. Can I get a mover for that? Councillor Lewis. That report is now on the floor for any questions or comments from council. Councillor Noyes.
I was a farmer's daughter. I planted many, many trees. And this is an example that I think that we're trying to go after the bad players, the developers that go down and do, clear cutting and everything else. But the person who is going to be hurt the most is going to be a person who owns a piece of property, a house that they may have lived in for 50 years, and they need to take down a tree for whatever reason. It's going to cost them a minimum, from what I understand, $50 for the permit. They're going to have to replace the tree. This is a tree that's 31 centimeters, by the way. They're going to have to replace the tree at their cost, which is what they're probably around $200. Then they're going to have to pay $250 so someone can make sure that they're maintaining the tree. So, and that's for every tree I take down, I'm going to have to do that twice. So I'm now into $550 to take down a tree in my backyard. I think that's, I just don't see that these are the people that we're going after. And I don't know why we're going after these people who own property, they're paying their taxes, they have a tree in their backyard that they want to take down. I don't think anybody would take down a tree unless they had a reason for it. People like trees. These aren't the people we should be aiming this for. It should be restricted to the developers or large pieces of property or heritage trees or endangered species trees. It shouldn't be Mr. and Mrs. Smith who has a tree in their backyard that maybe they're worried that the next strong wind's going to come, it's going to knock it into their roof, or they're going to, we had a tree not that long ago, lucky the town owned it, that it was so far, the town owned it, was on the street line, that the branches were actually hitting our house. It was a locust, I think, and the branches were hitting our house and was actually hitting the eaves troughs and stuff. And on top of that, when it rained, people who were walking by got hit in the head, because if you know these kind of trees, they kind of weigh down. People are actually getting hit in the head when they walked under the tree if it was wet and damp. I'm not for making people have to pay a minimum of $550 to take down a tree. I think if they want to take down a tree, they should. What you're going to find is nobody's going to call. Nobody's going to ask for a permit. They're just going to take it down. I would for $550, and if not, and I'm not encouraging people to do this, but I think you're going to have a lot of strikes by lightning. The trees are going to be gone, or you're not going to. No, right now, if you have a noise complaint, the noise bylaw guy comes, unless he actually hears it, he can't issue a ticket. So if somebody chomps down a tree, trying to avoid the $550 fine, tree's gone. What are you going to do? You can't prove that it's 31 centimeters or more. I think we're going after the wrong people here. I think we need to really concentrate on developers, the heritage, the heritage, the green space and things like that. I don't think we should be concentrating on people's trees in their backyard or their front yard or their side yard. I think we should leave them totally off of this. I just read you the thing in St. Catharines. This was done a few years ago. I think we're just going way too far with this. It reminds me of the dog bylaw where you had to kind of how many minutes you could leave your dog out in the backyard without being fined. I mean, I think we're going way too far over. And I'm all for trees and I'm all totally against the developers, what they do for the clear cutting. But I think you're going too far when you're going after people's trees in their backyards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. I'm going to go to Councillor Lewis first, and then I'm going to go to his worship.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Daniels, for your presentation. I know the mayor mentioned, as well as Councillor Dubanow, you will certainly be missed, and I know EAC will certainly miss you, and in the short period of time in which you've been here, you have left quite the mark with EAC and with this tree bylaw. I do believe this to be fair and objective. Coming back to council after almost 2-decade reprieve, this was something that many people were asking for 20 years ago. And I do ask myself, where would we be today if we would have moved quicker on an EAC committee, quicker on an environmental planner, and certainly quicker on a tree bylaw that speaks to, I think, many of the concerns that many of our residents face. I also find it interesting when I hear what I call new people to the community, which I completely welcome, complaining about the lack of tree canopy and all of the things that many of us who have lived here our whole lives have had major concern with. So I do think this strikes this balance. And as our community grows, as the mayor mentioned at the last meeting, we need to be ready to meet that demand and that growth. And I think this bylaw and the staff complement that go with it speak to that need. One of the other things I want to mention as well is it's been brought up in previous council meetings about the loss of a sense of community when dealing with certain policy initiatives within the municipality. And I do agree that sense of community is certainly something we need to be mindful of, but there's no more of a bigger loss of our sense of community when our tree canopy is gone. And maybe that's something that I've learned from attending the EAC meetings, and they've been completely reasonable. I know they wanted a larger diameter for tree, but they have accepted what we've come forward with. And I think that strikes the compromise we're looking for, and it also shows the goodwill on both sides to make this work. One of the things I wanted to mention, and Ms. Daniels actually mentioned it, was how this was tied to the short-term rental aspect in terms of fines. And I just want to pause on that for one moment, because that is a policy that this municipality has painted operators, good or bad, with one brush, for right or for wrong, and we've moved forward with that. But we have taken an approach of dealing with some problems by bringing everyone into the equation as being the bad operator. So I hear your point, Councillor Noyes, when you mention, maybe it's targeting people who shouldn't be. But I think the recent example of short-term rentals is a prime example of that. We had some complaints. We took a policy position over a number of years to come up with a solution. But in the end, we also divided people, and we also painted everyone with the same brush. I also, when I hear that sense of community comment, and it came up under the short-term rental policy, other than the fact of a bit of a racial flare-up, which when it came to short-term rentals, I think that was certainly an example of someone that doesn't look like us is coming into our neighborhood and things are a little different. But I'm glad this is tied to the short-term rental bit, because it was fine there. And I don't understand why, if it was fine for that policy decision, why it couldn't be fine in this regard. I think we need to look at individual trees on properties. I think we have to look at replanting. And I do agree with the mayor, and I hope we do move forward with looking at the larger chunks of properties and come up with a way to include them, because that is really the big problem that maybe has been a little bit lost in that painting everyone with the same brush approach. But I'm quite proud of this. I hope you're proud of this. I hope the planning department's proud of it. And I hope we as a council are proud of this, because it should have been done a long time ago. And those are my comments, and I will be supporting the report tonight.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lewis. Your worship.
Yeah, just a little bit of background. I had circulated to members of council. I'm not sure if that was one of the attachments you were able to open or not, Councillor Noyes, from the Region's Planning Committee last week. It shows that Fort Erie has the greatest tree canopy coverage in Niagara. And, you know, that's great, but it may speak more of some of the other municipalities who don't have quite as good a canopy cover, and it's very fragile. It's something that's of great concern. The other item that I had sent was with respect to a tree planting initiative that the Niagara Peninsula Conservation Authority had engaged in at the old Winger Road landfill site, which was closed some time ago. I think I may have mentioned that the Niagara Parks Commission also has recently engaged in tree planting at the old fort, and along the parkway in a number of areas. And so this is something that we, in my view, we should be attuned to, because the community, I think, has made it loud and clear that natural heritage is very important in this community. This was brought before council in August when we directed staff to initiate a review of the current tree bylaw. There was an open house on September the 25th, which people attended, referred to by Ms. Daniels. On November the 27th, we had a public meeting here, and we heard from a number of delegations, including representatives from EAC, who suggested a smaller diameter for trees. And we've struck, I think, what is a reasonable balance. A 30 centimeter diameter at 4 feet height is a pretty substantial tree. And I hear Councillor Noyes' concerns about residents being put upon to cut down trees in their own yard that they may have lived in for 40 years. The difficulty is that there are people who have been cutting down trees, and I've seen newcomers, I think, to the community come in, and they cut down the trees in their yard. I don't know why. I don't get it. Don't understand it. I didn't come from the city. Maybe that's part of the problem. But we also have a lot of people that are coming in here, and they're more than committed to ensuring that we protect our natural heritage. So I'm supportive of this. I hear and I have some concerns for the concerns expressed by Councillor Noyes. I hear that. I'm thinking about the trees in my yard. They're either under 30 centimeters or they're way beyond 30 centimeters. And, you know, it may come a time when we'll have to cut down a large willow tree that we have in our yard. The cost of getting a permit is going to be peanuts compared to the cost of hiring somebody to take the tree down. So I'm not too concerned about that. It'll be a sad day if that tree ever comes down. So I'm going to support this. There's been more than adequate consultation. The people that Councillor Noyes may have been speaking to today, they had at least 2 opportunities to speak to us. Plus, they've had an opportunity here to communicate with us. I haven't heard from them, but I've heard from a lot of people who are saying that we need to protect our natural heritage, and that includes the trees. So I'm going to support this. If it turns out that there are problems down the road, we can always modify this, but I do hope that we'll get something from staff relative to parcels of land that are larger than half a hectare or a hectare, so that we've got that covered as well within the urban boundary. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. Councillor McDermott.
Well, Councillor Lewis pretty much covered it for me. I just want to say this is a great report, and considering the time that Rachel's been here, this has probably been the all-consuming report. So, this we have to support. And the other thing is, I think there's got to be an educational component to let developers and people within this town that are, having to cut trees or feel that they're going to be compelled to cut trees. The bigger fine's certainly going to help matters. So, but I think there still has to be an educational component to developers and community members on our website, and press releases to make sure it gets out there what you can do and what you shouldn't do. But I wish Rachel all the best of luck. You've been a godsend for the tree people here, I'll tell you that much, and really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. Councillor Christensen, I was going to ask you to take the chair so I could speak, but if you want to speak, you haven't spoken? Okay, Councillor Christensen, I'm going to get Councillor Flagg to take the chair from me in a moment, but please go right ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and again, thank you, Rachel. Thank you very much. I've witnessed a lot of tree cutting in my ward in the short time that I've been a councillor, both in individual lots and in some cases huge trees, much larger than 50 centimeters. My famous wake up, my clear cutting at Thunder Bay and Burley after the storm, the winter storm. So, and I'm actually one of your original, I do literally hug trees, so I put that out there right now. For me, and this represents I guess it's almost like a cultural thing. The protection of our environment and our tree canopy is beyond beyond the concept of individual properties. It is something, and I think in municipalities that do have tree bylaws that protect against cutting and destruction on individual properties, there is a recognition that it's both the larger woodlots and moderate woodlots and forests, but it's also the contribution, and particularly as we intensify development in our town, a concept that trees belong to all of us, they benefit all of us, they give joy to all of us. Trees are something that I think, as Councillor McDermott said, contribute to our health, but they also provide new residents in town speak about the magic of our community, and a lot of that. We see people coming objecting to development because of the loss. So it behooves us to really consider how best to protect. I'm aware, having lived in much more intensive urban settings for much of my adult life, the challenges with respect to trees that are becoming aged and that where they become a danger. But when we're talking about the majority of the trees we're talking about, I really believe that we have to look at this as a community and a community benefit. And at some point, we have to acknowledge that's our environment gives us sustenance and it can destroy us. I think we have to give the same respect to our natural environment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Christensen. Councillor Flagg, would you take the chair so I could speak?
Absolutely. You want to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll share a brief story. I didn't grow up in Fort Erie. I grew up in the north end of the region, and I fell in love with a Fort Erie girl, and I made my way down the QEW, and yeah, I made my way down the QEW, and I went from someone who said, why would I ever want to raise kids in that dreary town, to someone who fell in love with this community, volunteered in this community, made this community a part of my identity and my life, and now I've been very fortunate to be trusted by the residents of Ward 2 to represent them here on council, and it's a great honor. One of the most striking things that I notice, not so much in southern Ontario, but the moment I cross the border and I head down into Chautauqua County, down into northern Pennsylvania, is how intense the tree canopy is down there. And the reason being, the emerald ash borer has not had the same devastation on that side of the river yet that we have had here. I built the house I'm in now in 2016. It backs onto a woodlot. When we went through and we picked that lot, it was the most beautiful, lush, green space. I wanted to build my house there. I wanted to look at that green space. And in the span of 1 year, all of the ash trees in that woodlot were dead. You used to see the ash borers walking along the road. The emerald ash borer has destroyed our tree canopy, and it is, we're spending so much money and we're investing so much money to renew our municipal trees. Residents are burdened by the cost of bringing these trees down. It is, until you leave Fort Erie and get onto the other side of the river and you see what an intact canopy looks like without all these dead trees poking out the top, you really can't appreciate the devastation that has happened to our community because of that ash borer and losing 80% of our tree canopy, which was primarily ash trees. So I am never one to want to regulate what individuals can do with their own property. They pay taxes, it's their home. Some people say your home is your castle. I am someone who believes strongly in that. But at the same time, I don't think we can afford to lose one single healthy tree in this community when, through no choice of our own and through no ability of ours to control, an invasive species came into this community and ravaged our tree canopy. So to that end, knowing that a 30 centimeter diameter at breast height tree, knowing how old such a tree would typically be at that size when you're talking an oak and a maple, if you're going to take down a tree that's 150, 100 years old, depending on the species, and with everything that we've had happen in this community, I think you got to justify it to all of us. If you're going to take down a part of our canopy, you better have a good reason. The concern I have, and I raised it during the presentation, and I'm always, I'd rather use a carrot rather than a stick. I like to encourage compliance. Perhaps I'm naive, but I genuinely believe that individuals, when given an option to, do right when it's easy to do, they will do it voluntarily. I'm very concerned when I look at some of the costs and the numbers related to replacement trees. Is someone going to pay the $3,000 cash in lieu for the minimum size, or are they just going to pay the $1,500 fine? I mean, finances are tough right now. It's already costing thousands of dollars to take this tree down. You know what? Someone's going to make that choice, and I would rather find a way to encourage them to make the right choice, get a permit, follow the process. And when I look at the way that schedule is structured, I think it disincentivizes that. I'm going to support this bylaw this evening. I think it's important. We need to do everything we can to try and restore the canopy that has been ravaged by the emerald ash borer in this community. But I really hope when we get the bylaw back, that there's some consideration for that. I know we have a draft bylaw here, but there's some other discussions that are going on. I think we really need to look at that, because I firmly believe we have to use a carrot rather than a stick in this situation. I know Councillor Noyes had mentioned she doesn't want trees, that's fine. I genuinely believe most individuals do want their trees, they do want to protect them. If there's a situation where they need to come down, I think they would be willing to work with us as long as we're reasonable about it. So those were my only comments, Mr. Chair, and I will be supporting this. Ms. Daniels, thank you for everything. I said before, I'm upset you're leaving. I understand why. We're going to miss you. I think, though, that the fact that you stuck around to put this through, I think this is something that we can be proud of, and I think it's important. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Noyes?
Thank you. And it's not that I don't like trees. I love trees. And I'm very much in favor of the natural heritage.
I apologize.
I'm also very behind people's ownership of their own property, and they pay the taxes, they own the property. They should be able to at least have a tree or not have a tree. The one question I have, and I'm glad Rachel is still here, one of the exemptions was fireplace to warm the house, or for personal use. And I should have asked her when she was up there, but so if I I have not a tree on my property anymore, so I'm not trying to be protective here, and I'm not planning on cutting any trees down. I back onto the conservation area. I don't need a tree in my backyard. So just to let you know, it's not that I don't like trees. I have a whole forest behind me. But, okay, so we can burn it for personal use? We can take a tree down and burn it for personal use?
Ms. Daniels, would you respond?
Just a clarification, it doesn't say it says to heat your home or for personal use. So
Thank you.
I should have asked you when you were there. But anyway, the one thing too about this, you're saying that we had 2 public meetings or an open house or whatever. I'm sure the public, when I read it, I didn't know we were talking about the trees in my backyard, or if I had a tree in my backyard. I didn't know that's what this would apply to, and I would say probably a fair amount of the population doesn't know we were talking about the tree in your backyard or your front yard, that we were going to start regulating that. I don't think the public knew that. So I'm strongly encouraging all of us to put it on our Facebook page before this becomes bylaw and say, okay, if you cut down a tree that's more than 31 centimeters, you will have to pay $50 for the permit, you have to pay $1,000. You have to plant another tree, 2 other trees for every tree you take down, and you have to pay us $500. I think everybody should put that on their Facebook page and see what the response is going to be. And I'm being facetious, but I'm going to do it. I'm going to be interested to see how many people think this is just a great idea. The other part is, I don't think it's enforceable. I honestly don't. It's going to be, don't ask, don't tell. So part of me is saying, well, it doesn't really matter what it says because nobody's going to do it anyway. It's the large ones that we're worried about. It's the developers we're worried about. And the other point, a few weeks ago, it wasn't that long ago, we talked about development charges when you want to put up a house. I think we're up to 63,000 in 2 years, around there, right? 63,000. Now, if you happen to have another, let's say you had to remove a few trees to put up the house. Let's say you have to remove 3 trees. You're now up to almost 4,000 on top of that 63,000. Not only that, would we still have to pay the $600? I guess we wouldn't have to. Okay, right now you have to pay $600 if there's no tree on your property. That's kind of, I think it's $600. And it's a vacant lot and you want to build a house. You have to pay $600 for a tree that you may never see, ever, on your property. So would that $600 then be on top of the 4,000 you're going to have to pay now because you've taken down the 3 trees?
Are we on development charges here, or are we
No,
still
we're
on?
on the tree. I'm trying to talking about the fines. Like, is it cumulative?
Yeah, that was asked.
No, okay, so am I going to have to pay the $600 or not? This is for
Point of order, Mr. Chair. We're not talking about the development bylaw. We're talking about the tree bylaw here.
I was trying to figure that out.
No, it all goes together, because if you don't have a tree on your property, you have to pay $600 for a tree.
But we're talking about the tree removal.
Okay, so we remove the trees, so there's no more trees on my property. Do I then have to pay the $600?
Help someone?
Anyway, I'm just saying, we're just increasing, it's going to be almost unaffordable for someone to build a house on a lot that has a few trees.
Okay, I appreciate, but I just feel like I'm the hamster in the ball right now. We're going around in circles on this a little bit. So, anyone else have anything, Your Worship?
Yeah, I have a couple of amendments, and I just wanted to clarify, was this on Let's Talk Fort Erie?
Ms. Daniels, can you help?
It on Let's Talk moving forward. I don't believe we had our own Let's Talk page for this one. It was directly on the website, if that's correct by comms.
Okay. Thank you. So, this isn't as if it wasn't raised in terms of whether we should have it on private property, people's lots or not. This is something that has been ongoing through all of the reports that we've received. It was, I know, an issue that was under discussion when I first met with some of the environmental representatives and Ms. Daniels. But I had 2 amendments that I wanted to propose with respect to the draft bylaw, or maybe I can just, maybe they don't need to make a formal amendment, but the definition of tree, I think, needs to be added to, so that not only does it say what it currently states, which is tree or trees means any living species of woody perennial plant, including its root system, which has reached or can reach a height of at least 4.5 meters at physiological maturity. I think it should continue, and trees referred to in section 3.1 hereof, which refers to trees with diameter, et cetera. So, Ms. Dewar, I guess, Chair, I would ask you, do we need to make that formal amendment, or is this something that staff can tidy up before the bylaw comes forward?
Ms. Delroy?
Councillor Flagg, it would be better if we can make a formal amendment. That way it's there and we can include that.
So I move that amendment then, that we include at the end of the definition for trees, the words, and trees referred to in section 3.1 hereof.
And we don't need a seconder for that because we're in council. So all those in favor of that? Good, passes. Continue, Your Worship. Oh, thank you. 1 against. Still passes.
So then Councillor Noyes was just referring to one of the exceptions, and I think we should make it clear in that exception so that I think section 6.1C Actually, I don't even know where A is, so that probably should be renumbered. But it should be clear that it's the harvest of trees by the owner of a woodland property. I think we should insert the word woodland so that it's clear that that's what's being referred to. So I would move that amendment.
Again, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And then finally, to the point that Councillor Noyes raised about somebody having a vacant lot, they want to put up a house, they have to apply for a building permit, there may or may not be a need for a tree preservation plan. That doesn't seem to be covered by any of the exemptions, or is there something in the bylaw that deals with that specific situation?
Ms. Daniels?
Is it a development permit?
The permit shall be issued when all of the following are satisfied.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Dubanow?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just to expand on that, because I understand where Councillor Noyes is going. If we apply for a building permit or a development application, we'd be removing trees. Now, just for clarification purposes, as part of a lot creation or as part of a site plan, trees may be included in that. Would we be able to use the compensation trees as part of the tree removal as part of the development process, as part of the tree replacements? Because I think the concern Councillor Noyes has is about double dipping, and I'm just wondering if this would all be covered as part of that process where the replacement trees would count towards whatever trees need to be as part of a lot created or something along those lines. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lewis?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention one quick thing. On November the 27th, which was the night of our public open house, I posted that the bylaw will regulate the destruction, injury, and harvesting of trees in town, including trees on private property. I know this was discussed private property at EAC, so I just wanted to mention that I've already posted it. It's out there. And
That
there's
was
61
fast.
impressions.
That was fast.
Okay. We good? You've spoken twice, right? She mentioned more information. Amendments have passed. Okay. I think we're good. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Back to you, Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you very much for that, Councillor Flagg. I appreciate that. So we have no other reports this evening. Do we have any new business or inquiries for members of council this evening under Planning and Development Services? Councillor Noyes.
I think this falls under Planning and Development Services about the dog park in Stevensville, in Stevensville. I was hoping for a cost of what it costs in Ridgeway and some feedback from actually Councillor Christensen at some point, because she actually has her dogs there. Again, I do not have a dog. Don't have a tree, don't have a dog. And no chickens, no chickens either. That was good. Anyway, I'd like to know, because I know we took the 100,000 and we made it into 50,000. And I probably should not have supported that because I don't really know what it costs. So I would like to know what the cost for the dog park in Ridgeway was. And I'd also like to know what improvements should be done. I know Councillor Christensen had some ideas. The other thing is I would like to know when we're going to start the public meeting so that we can move on it quickly, because we have waited 20 years for it. So I think it's time to move on.
So just before I go to Ms. Del Oria, because I'm sure she can provide that information even at a future meeting. Just for clarification, we did have two dog parks originally. One was proposed for Black Creek, the other was proposed for Stevensville, and during the capital budget deliberations, I recall we eliminated one of them, which I think is how that got cut in half. So I think that's where we came from that. But Ms. Del Oria, is this information that you could that you have available now, or is it something you can perhaps provide council with a memo in the future with some information?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would be happy to provide a memo to council regarding what was the cost of constructing a dog park in Crystal Ridge Park.
Thank you. Councillor Noyes?
Much appreciated. I kind of understand it, but I wasn't sure whether that was for two parks or for one park, either Black Creek or Stevensville. I didn't know if they were talking two or one, but anyway, we'll.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll get the memo on that too, so we can plan for that. Also, Ms. Del Oria, you got the part as well about when the process will start. That's something perhaps for the memo as well. Any other members of council have any new business or inquiries this evening in plenary? Any questions regarding the business status report? Seeing none, I hand the chair back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. That takes us to Infrastructure Services. Councillor Noyes.
Yes, Infrastructure Services is now in session. There are no presentations and delegations. There are no reports. Any new business inquiries? Seeing none, any questions on business status report? Seeing none, I turn the chair back over.
Okay, so you just redeemed yourself, Councillor Noyes.
I didn't think I need any redemption. I think it's you guys.
That's the spirit.
Okay, that takes us to Corporate Services. Councillor McDermott.
Thank you. Corporate and Community Services is now in session. We have no presentations and delegations. We have no reports. Any new business inquiries? Seeing none, anything on the business status report? Back to you, Your Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. So we have couple of items in closed session. Can I have a motion for us to go into closed session? Councillor Lewis, any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed? That's carried. So let's We're back in session. Councillor Lewis, you have the motion for us to rise and reconvene into open session?
Moved by myself and seconded by nobody,
No,
because we don't
don't
need
need
one.
to, no.
The council does now rise and reconvene from closed session at 9:31 PM with report that council approves the January 29th, 2024 closed session meeting minutes, and that staff and legal counsel proceed as directed regarding 477 Ridge Road North.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? None opposed, that is carried. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, Your Worship. This week, on February 14th, Valentine's Day, we have a Museum and Cultural Heritage Advisory Committee meeting here at Town Hall. That's at 1 PM in Conference Room 2.
Councillor Noyes.
I have a meeting tomorrow night for the Niagara District Humane Society, the Greater Niagara Humane Society. I think it's at Katz this week, or this month, on Monday at 6 o'clock. And another meeting is the Traffic Coordinating Committee meeting on the 21st at 12 PM.
That's at Town Hall?
Yes,
And I'm sorry, the Humane Society one was,
Katz Caboose Restaurant.
and that's on the 13th,
No, that's on the 19th.
19th. Okay, and anyone else? Councillor Lewis and then Councillor Christensen.
February the 14th at 6 PM is the Crystal Beach Business Improvement Association meeting.
And where's that?
Crystal Ridge Centennial, Crystal Ridge Library.
Councillor Christensen.
February the 20th at 4:30 PM is the Fort Erie Public Library Board meeting at the Centennial branch of the library.
Any others? Then Councillor Dubanow, can I go to you?
Yes, you can, Your Worship. I'd like to move that council and committee adjourn at 9:33 PM this evening.
All those in favor? Councillor Noyes, surely you're going to vote in favor of that one. That's unanimous, I'm happy to say.